collarbones, and a taste of fear carved into their skin, and it was impossible to believe in anything. Fear is the coldest thing in the desert, and it burns you, bows you down to half your height, and owns you, and no one hears you. 'Cause what could grow in the desert anyway? Thank you.
Emi Mahmood. Thank you for listening to the interview from the BBC World Service. If you enjoyed today's programme, you can listen to the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview. I'm Saroja Coelho, CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in our CBC studios, and thank you for joining us. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube this morning. We're on air with you till 8:37 AM with the morning show. If you need us on the commute between now and then, it's 788-3093. The person picking up the phone is Mr. Corey Funk. Good morning, Corey. Corey's also directing the show. Brad Lillies is also here. Brad is our YouTube producer, waving hello to you on the stream there if you're watching there today, and we hope you might be. And Sierra Sanders is in this morning. Good morning, Sierra. Sierra is donning her Jets jersey, repping, getting ready for tonight's big game, and is teching the show this morning. All right, let's get right over to Heather Wells before we have a look at the weather and what else is coming up on the program today. She has our morning headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Family and friends are mourning the death of a 22-year-old woman killed Monday in the West End. Winnipeg police found Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man, both critical, in a home on Sherbourne. Both later died. Investigators are calling it a murder-suicide. We're going to hear from her stepfather coming up at 6:30. A Manitoba truck driver whose license was suspended is challenging the provincial law that temporarily stopped him from driving. Balwinder Bossy argues the Highway Traffic Act's review process violates Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In Winnipeg today, weather-wise, mix of sun and cloud, a high of 15. Brandon, very similar, mainly cloudy, your high 15 as well. And up north in Thompson, a good chance of showers this afternoon, 60% chance of that happening, and a high of 7. Well, in the first hour of the program, the mental health crisis in this country has reached epic proportions when you think about how long people are waiting for care. And politicians and policymakers are struggling to find solutions. We're going to have a look at the landscape now. A lot of people have mental health top of mind after what happened at the street festival. The man who has been charged was under mental health care in that province in BC. In addition, in the first hour of the show, feels like Monday was 1,000 years ago, but remember? Election Day? This morning, we have a post-election wrap-up. Marco Vellotti, who's been with us throughout the last month, is going to join us to look at where we are at this morning in this country. A little bit later in the show, a clinic in Winnipeg is giving people a do-it-yourself test to screen for drugs, for fentanyl. So we'll have that as a special report. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
The beloved singer-songwriter Sarah Harmer recently got the Humanitarian Award from the Junos. Sarah will be here to talk about her journey, when she realized she could lend her voice to issues she cares about, and why at a time of global unrest, it's important to look in our own backyards.
It's like they say, action is the antidote to despair.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin with a rare look inside Iran at a crucial moment in time. It's been holding dialogue with its long-standing enemy, the United States, over the fate of its nuclear program. And now there's uncertainty after a postponement of tomorrow's scheduled round of talks. CBC News is in Tehran, gauging the mood and the appetite for a deal. Senior international correspondent Margaret Evans leads our newscast.
On the streets here, in the markets, where people associate soaring prices with decades-old Western sanctions, there has been a thread of hope for a deal between Washington and Tehran. The value of the Iranian rial has dropped 50% over the past year, putting pressure on the government to ease economic pain. If they reach a deal, that would be great, says Lale. It will benefit both sides. But there is also doubt and pride. My opinion is negative, says printer Moshtaba Abrushami.
Does he want them to make a deal or not?
Generally, we like Iran to have relations with all countries, he says, but the question is at what price? U.S. President Donald Trump's earlier threats to bomb Iran haven't helped, although senior officials here downplay them. Ali Shamkhani is a political advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Within Trump's 100 days in office, he has been unsuccessful in many of his projects, he says, in the tariff war against Canada, in Ukraine, even Yemen. He says he's neither pessimistic nor optimistic. The outline of a deal would aim to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, much like the agreement Trump pulled out of in 2018 during his first presidency. Analysts here, including Sasan Karimi, say the first 3 rounds of talks between the old foes have been positive, but not yet substantive.
It shows that they both have enough political will to do so. But this was only the first phase.
And with new tensions emerging this week and a delay in the next round of talks, the worry is that that political will has already been used up. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
A group of elderly Canadian veterans is the center of attention in the Netherlands today. They've arrived to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the country's liberation during the Second World War. The youngest of them is 96, the oldest 105. They are a few of the thousands of Canadian troops who freed the Dutch from the Nazi regime in 1945. The CBC's Chris Brown is in Apeldoorn this morning.
I think he can walk.
Their bodies are frail, but the Canadian veterans who stepped off the bus or were helped off in wheelchairs brought big smiles and firm handshakes to Apeldoorn. Among them, 101-year-old George Morash, a machine gunner who was wounded in France.
I was here for the liberation.
102-year-old George Brewster was a Spitfire pilot who flew over 60 missions during the war.
It's an honor to be with you.
It's an honor to have you.
Also part of the Canadian delegation here are sailors whose ships participated in D-Day and soldiers who served in Italy, France, and the UK. Jennifer McLeod is from Veterans Affairs.
They came from all over Canada. It's a big journey for them, but they are really excited to be here, and all of them wanted to be here and are anxious to come back to the Netherlands any chance they get.
The push by Canada's army through Holland's Rhineland in February and March 1945 was the last major Allied offensive of the war, and also one of the most vicious. In total, Veterans Affairs says more than 7,600 Canadians were killed liberating the Netherlands. Many of them were buried in a cemetery near Groesbeek, where later today there will be a ceremony of commemoration. The veterans will also be celebrated at street parades in Apeldoorn and at Wageningen, where a Canadian general accepted the surrender of Nazi forces in the Netherlands 8 decades ago. Chris Brown, CBC News in Apeldoorn.
In just a few hours, Prime Minister Mark Carney will speak to Canadians for the first time since his election night victory speech. He's expected to lay out the priorities for his government and take questions from the media. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. Janice, what are the big questions Carney will face today?
John, in the only media interview that he's given since the election, Mark Carney told the BBC's global audience that he's not going to head to Washington to be a tourist. He wants a serious discussion, and it's going to have to be on Canada's terms. Former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, who's now a fellow with the Washington-based Hudson Institute, that's a think tank, he told As It Happens last night, there's an opportunity here for a reset.
I think it is reestablishing dialogue, reestablishing trust. I agree with Prime Minister Carney that the relationship will take a long time to get back to what it was, but I think this could be the first step in that journey.
To prepare for this meeting and set the table for other priorities too, Carney has spent the last 2 days taking briefings, making phone calls to other world leaders, but also provincial premiers, seeking their priorities for the upcoming talks. In Carney's 25-minute conversation with Quebec's premier yesterday in French, he reassured François Legault that Quebec's supply-managed agriculture industries, culture, language, water won't be on the table, but he also indicated that this negotiation is going to be handled by the federal government only only at this point. Premiers are not going to have a direct seat at the table, at least for now. In addition to the urgency of dealing with Trump's tariffs, Carney's only 6 weeks away from hosting Trump and the other G7 leaders in Kananaskis, Alberta. He has to pull also a throne speech and a budget together here at home by the end of the month. So as he meets with Canadian reporters this morning, there is a lot to ask about.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Carney's news conference begins at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it live on CBC News Network or follow along on the live page on cbcnews.ca. The Conservative caucus will gather in Ottawa on Tuesday for a post-election debrief. And the federal NDP will try to figure out its next steps as well next week. The New Democrats went into the campaign with 24 MPs. They limped away from Monday's election with just 7. And now they need a new leader after Jagmeet Singh announced he is stepping down. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
A lot of work that needs to be done. There's no question about it.
Vancouver MP Jenny Kwan is one of just 7 New Democrats returning to Ottawa, but she says she's been here before. In 2001, Kwan was a member of the BC legislature when the Liberals decimated the provincial NDP government.
And we came back stronger. And so this is what we've got to do now with the federal NDP.
But the New Democrats will be weakened. With so few seats, they've lost party status. It means they lose the guarantee to speak during question period and the chance to be part of committees to scrutinize new legislation.
Absolutely, it's going to be a lot of work.
Edmonton New Democrat MP Heather McPherson points out the Liberals are just a few seats short of a majority government. They may need the NDP to help them pass legislation.
We do have the balance of power. We do have the ability to make sure that the government is doing things for Canadians.
The NDP says it will move quickly to find an interim leader to replace Jagmeet Singh until a permanent one is chosen. Brad Levine is a former NDP campaign director.
We have to obviously renew the ranks of the party, fundraise, and use the opportunity of the leadership race as a rebuilding opportunity.
Levine says New Democrats have formed government in 2 provinces and official opposition in 4 others. He calls that a tremendous base to relaunch the federal party. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Australians vote in a federal election on Saturday. The key issues in their vote, very similar to the issues that Canadians were contemplating just earlier this week. But unlike Canada, independent candidates are seeing a big boost in support. Phil Mercer reports from Sydney.
This is Australia's cost of living election. The economy is forecast to slow down.
Would you like some salad with that?
At a church hall in Sydney, residents come for a free meal and to lament chronic housing shortages and soaring rents.
We were in hardship and we were told to come here and seek whatever help we can.
You can't stand here telling people that they're much better off after 3 years.
You have identified a range of issues, but you have no solutions.
Peter Dutton, the Conservative opposition leader, is battling the Labour Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for power.
Governments have pretended Australia is in good shape by using immigrants' wealth as the government's achievement.
Immigration is another big issue, so is climate change. At the last election, a third of voters rejected the 2 major parties. Opinion polls suggest Australia could have its first minority government in over a decade after Saturday's election. Phil Mercer for CBC News, Sydney.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good Friday morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. 6:10 a.m. is the time right now. It's going to be a nice day and even warmer weekend. You know what? I'm even going to use the word hot for the weekend. When you hear the forecast, it's a little unsettling because we're going from spring to summer, but I think probably most people will like that. It's fallen on the weekend, right? So we'll get into that in a sec. This hour on the program, we are going to be talking about an award-winning author. We're going to hear from her. She has recently released a book that reflects on her spirituality. How can examining your spirituality help you exist in a foreign land? That is one of the topics that this author examined. Stay tuned. We're going to hear an interview with her. Also this hour on the show, fixing the complex problem of the mental health crisis in Canada. What does that look like this morning and at this halfway through point of 2025 nearly? We'll have that discussion as well. And Marco Vellotti, he's been with us the whole month looking at the election. He's going to wrap the week as we look at the results in more detail this morning before we head off into our weekend. Heather Wells is here. She has news headlines and a number of stories. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, we are learning more about the victim of a homicide Monday in the West End. 22-year-old Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man both died after being found in a home on Sherbourne. Investigators are calling it murder-suicide. Carrier's boyfriend, Hayden Shelton, says she went to her ex's house on Monday to collect some of her belongings. He calls her the most genuine, caring, and sweetest person he has ever met. We'll hear more coming up. A local clinic is providing a way for people to test drugs for fentanyl free of charge. Test strips are the newest items in the health box vending machine at Norwest Co-op Community Health. Our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Heather, we were just brainstorming a question for Facebook or the listener line this morning. And Corey, what did you come up with?
I was thinking, and you were skeptical.
I poo-pooed it, yeah, for sure.
That I think a lot of people probably in the city have their like game day rituals, or maybe their superstitions that they might do before a game to make sure the Jets win.
Okay, let's bring Heather back in because you're a big fan. I was just skeptical if people have their own superstitions or rituals. I don't know. Do you?
I don't, and I don't know of anyone who does. Corey, do you?
I don't, but I don't know. I just imagine there's got to be some hardcore fans that maybe they
might
something, like maybe they wear a certain hat.
So let's
or
put
like
that
light
out
a
there.
candle. I don't know.
Yeah.
Light a candle.
I don't know.
We might need a candle.
There's got to be someone.
Listen, both of us, I'm not just like here to poo-poo publicly on your idea. I'm opening this up because I also don't have a great idea. The best I've come up with so far, Heather, is what rhymes with Shifley. Anyone?
No.
Yeah, I could take all morning.
I also suggested you submit your favorite Jets haiku, but also that got poo-pooed.
So we got nothing. So
we'll come up with something.
By the end of the show, we
exactly.
will. The Jets are going to have to come up with something as well, because yesterday the team confirming that Shifley will be out for this game. It's a big one. They could get it done. I'm sure loving all the drone shots. Thank you, Heather. I know Heather's got to get back in the news center here. I'm loving all the drone shots. If you follow the Jets feed, Corey, I don't know if you've seen when they come over downtown Winnipeg and it's packed with all the people. Yeah, it's awesome. It's going to be nice for that tonight. Let's look at the weather. So that's obviously the game's not at home, but a lot of people do show up anyway, and they'll be viewing at the Canada Life Center. But tonight, a mix of sun and cloud for Winnipeg. Today, rather, wind becoming northwest at 20 late this afternoon, a high of 15 degrees. Into tonight, partly cloudy, the low down to 7. Tomorrow, clearing, the high 25. Sunday, sunny, 27 degrees. And by Monday, they're saying we could see 28. So we're going to have a significant shift here. Right now, it's 4 in Winnipeg. That is the hot spot in the province right now, if you can call that hot. Brandon is partly cloudy. It's -2 currently, and up in Thompson, it's partly cloudy and it's -7. What do you know about the commute?
It's been a very quiet commute. Haven't heard of any major issues. But if you're out there, you see something going on, give me a call. The number 204-788-3093.
Well, we start the show with a bit of a big question. Is it possible to be spiritual without religion? That is a question that award-winning Winnipeg author Linda Trin examines in her latest book. It's called Seeking Spirit, a Vietnamese non-Buddhist memoir. With this being the start of Asian Heritage Month in Canada, there was a conversation with her yesterday. Up to Speed host Faith Fundal spoke with Linda about the book.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy Asian Heritage Month.
Happy Asian Heritage Month to you as well. Linda, before we have this conversation, I know you have a short excerpt you'd like to share. Please do.
Okay, so I'll read from the prologue, and this kind of talks about what I'm trying to explore in the book. Swirling around me were the spirits of my ancestors from Vietnam, the country of my birth, the Buddhist traditions of my childhood, as well as the goddesses and gods of the mythologies of long ago civilizations. From all these bits and pieces of myself, I felt the need to fashion a mantle to ward off the prairie chill. I longed to invite spirit in and to seek its spark within myself. How do I find what I am seeking? In my darkest fantasies, or perhaps my lightest moments, I wondered what it would be like to leave it all behind and create a different life in a different way, in a different space. Quit my job, travel the world, find myself. What would it be like to leave all my loved ones and all my responsibilities? That might be too extreme. I didn't want to leave behind the life that I had built. I was not trying to escape my life, only to enrich it. There had to be another way, a middle path. I needed to seek spirit within the structure of my own life. I doubt I am the only one who has felt this empty space. I can't imagine I'm alone in my need for something more.
That's a very complicated thing. What made you decide that was where you wanted to go and that was what you wanted to put on that mantle?
I think for me, I was always searching for something. Being the child of immigrants, coming to Canada as a child, there were places where I didn't felt that I quite belonged, that I was too Vietnamese in some spaces, not Canadian enough in other spaces, or too Canadian in some spaces. And that idea of identity, of culture, also intersected with the search for faith, for spiritual nourishment. Even when I was young, that was something that I was looking for. I had rituals that we had growing up, but it wasn't exactly fitting me. So that was my kind of life's journey to try to find, am I seeking it around the world in different like external places, in different sacred spaces? I'm seeking it internally within myself as well. Just talk about my own story and to see if it would be relatable to anybody else.
Were you able to find an answer?
I think the beauty is in the search. And so in the book itself, I still have a lot of questions around my origin story, being the heroine in my life, what happens afterwards. Maybe the answer is in the questions. And there are clues and community that can be found, perhaps living with the unknowable. And would I call myself Buddhist? Would I call my family Buddhist? I don't think so. That's why there's the brackets of
Right.
the non-Buddhist memoir part. And so it's the spaces in between that are uneasy, but also there's a freedom to it. It's like, well, I can think about the different mythologies of the different ancestors and generations past all around the world. I can examine Buddhism from a point of view of, well, let me read some text. Let me, explore what this means, what the rituals are. Go to Vietnam, go to China, see how people practice. And then how does that fit into growing up on the prairies in Winnipeg and other factors of identity? What does it mean to be Vietnamese? What does it mean to be Asian? So it's both that tension, but also that excitement.
What were you thinking about? Because the book is a memoir. What was your, I guess, guiding principle as you shared these things?
I love reading memoir. I love reading about people's personal experiences. And then to write my own, I wanted to write about my specific story, like challenges I've had, moments of deep grief that I've had, but hopefully in a way that readers can see a spark or a nugget of it. Like I'm speaking about something very specific to me, but hopefully it's also that idea of, oh, when did other people feel alone? Or when did other people feel like they had questions? But then hopefully, when did other people have a joyous moment or an idea of like what an extraordinary spiritual moment would be in ordinary life? Hopefully it's all those things all at one time.
That relatability does help transcend what's on the page, right? You were also intentional about writing this in a very non-conventional way, but you decided to take a different approach. I think someone called it contemporary. How would you characterize your style?
It's definitely a collection of essays, but I play with form. I play with structure. For myself, I'm a visual thinker. So there are columns, there are grids, there's like a circular journey a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And so I also wanted to reflect, people aren't necessarily thinking in words, in spaces, in lines. So how does that look like? How does that feel? And yeah, just trying to be a little playful, a little experimental about it as well.
It is the beginning of Asian Heritage Month. In a month like this, what are you hoping people will consider or think about as they read your book?
It's a time to hold both Asian joy and celebration and highlight the accomplishments of Asian Canadians, and also think about racism and discrimination and the work that still needs to be done around inclusion. Hopefully, what I offer to the conversation is that idea of invitation, is that idea of empathy. My story might be completely different from your story, or it might be similar, but I'm inviting you into my home, into my heart, and hopefully that builds some kind of connection and inclusion, and that will hopefully pave the way for more connection, more empathy.
Linda, thank you for making space to talk about this, and take care.
Oh, Thank you so much for having me.
Linda Trinh is an award-winning Vietnamese Manitoba author. Seeking Spirit, a Vietnamese non-Buddhist memoir, is out now and available from River Street Writing. She was in conversation there with CBC's Faith Fundal.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
6:21 a.m. is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for being with us on the show this morning. We made it to Friday and the longest week ever. Remember Monday when we had an election? Remember April? Where did that go? It is on this May 2nd, Friday, mostly cloudy in Winnipeg. We're 4 degrees, and that's the warm spot in the province, but we're going to head to a high of 15 before nearly reaching 30 possibly by Monday, so hard to imagine. Well, next on the program, let's return to more serious matters. It is generally agreed that the years of COVID, pandemic, made mental health problems across this country much worse. And for a long while, there have not been enough supports to help people with mental illness and addiction. We see the consequences daily in our streets and communities. And after the Vancouver Street Festival tragedy, many are saying this problem must become a higher priority. A mental health team was overseeing the man charged with murder in connection with that horrific incident last Saturday that left 11 people dead, according to BC's Ministry of Health. This week, a spokesperson for the ministry said that Kaiji Adam Lowe was under the care of the Vancouver Coastal Health's mental health team and was, quote, being supervised under the Mental Health Act at the time of the tragedy. To talk about supports across this country and the conversation that this has prompted, we're joined by Dominic Morisano. She's a clinical psychologist and adjunct professor with the Della Luna School of Public Health at the University of Toronto, and she joins us via Zoom. Good morning.
Morning.
So is there a way to, this is a big question, but can you describe the current state of mental health supports across the country? We know what's happening here in Manitoba with huge wait lists, and some people are even saying not even wait lists, but just gaps in support. What does this look like across Canada?
Right now, it's really operating as a pay-to-play system. So you have clinical psychologists, you have psychotherapists, you have mental health clinicians who are trained to deal with more serious mental health issues, but they cost money, and there's a shortage of people who can afford those clinicians.
How much does that affordability challenge impact people not being able to find care?
Well, I mean, it's a complete gap. If people can't afford care, then they're not able to access care.
And in what, sorry, I should ask more specifically, what populations are most affected by that?
What populations are most affected by not being able to afford care?
By the affordability crisis. Who's left out of the conversation? Like, what populations are you most worried about in Canada?
Actually, I think that most people are being affected by the affordability crisis right now. I mean, only a very low percentage of the population is not being affected by the affordability crisis right now. Access to affordable food, access to affordable housing, access to clean water, access to safety and shelter. This is a big issue for a country that is supposed to be at a more developed, or let's say at an advanced stage of development. It's concerning.
What are experts talking about as potential blueprints for improving the situation around mental health supports?
Yeah, I mean, some years ago, I did some research into what are the most evidence-based treatments for improving mental health globally, and what it came down to, and I was a bit surprised by this at the time, although it was a long time ago, was if people have good housing, if people have healthy food, if people have good community supports, if people have access to clean water, the number of mental health issues that are present in a society go down exponentially. So when we see acts of violence, when we see acts of extreme mental health distress, that is showing us it's already too late. The problem is much deeper, and we need to start working on the root of the issues that are brewing in our society. We need to actually focus on affordable housing. We need to actually focus on affordable food. We need to actually focus on access to clean water and safe spaces and community development.
A lot of Canadians are talking about the mental health crisis and protecting the public from the potential of violence. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, nobody wants to be subject to potential violence, right? But I think that sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the amount of money that goes into incarcerating people is extreme. The cost of operating prisons and jails is very high. And if we could think about putting that money into things that would actually make our communities more sustainable and more healthy and safe and comfortable, then I think a lot fewer people would actually be getting to the stage where people feel like they need to be incarcerated.
I mentioned a lot of people, obviously we're talking about this now because people might be thinking about this in context of what happened in Vancouver, because the man being charged, the man who has been charged rather, was under the care of a mental health team there. What lessons might be learned from that?
I think that again, I think my message is probably the same. It's like the lessons that are learned is that is a symptom of a deeper rooted problem. So, we need to be welcoming people into Canada that are coming from other places that, if we're able to take them into this country, and I'm an immigrant myself, believe it or not, and it's not necessarily an easy place to come to these days. If we are able to support people that are here, wherever they are from, whether they're born here, whether they're not born here, and allow people to get good employment, allow people to get affordable housing, allow people to get access to healthy food and water. Again, I just think that people wouldn't be feeling so desperate, because right now you're seeing a lot of desperation and hopelessness. And we don't need to be there. My job as a clinical psychologist is to be hopeful. And I think that if we invest in the way we want our country to be, we're going to see a lot healthier society.
I understand, and I appreciate what you're talking about, and going back to sort of root causes and houselessness and what the things that can feed an individual's desperation. But when we're talking about mental health, there's sort of a couple things, right? There's obviously there's mental health and wellness, but then there's mental illness as well. So when you look at the gaps in the system, like just to get back to the care for people that might seek care and need care, what are we missing there? Is it the follow-up appointments? Is it the regular appointment with a psychologist, for example? Is it deeper care, and if somebody is in crisis, space in our hospitals? Or maybe it's all of the above?
Yeah, I mean, basically the number of people that get to extreme levels of mental health distress are actually low, right? So, and I'm talking about people that need, round the clock care or more, extreme intervention. And I think from a public health perspective, the way that you're going to have the biggest impact on mental health is, again, to hit the broader bases, work with family doctors, work with community workers, work with people who have access to the public on a regular basis to be able to do mental health screenings, be trained in brief intervention, and have access to more, basically to affordable and available care for the people that need it before it gets to the level of extreme distress, right? So to catch it at the broader levels, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Once we get to the higher levels of mental health care, there are systems within our hospitals that are trained to, people are trained to deal with those things. The problem is that right now they're inundated with so many more people than is sustainable to serve.
Thank you very much for all of your analysis this morning. We really appreciate having you with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That is Dominic Morisano. She's a clinical psychologist and adjunct professor at the Dalla Luna School of Public Health at the University of Toronto. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 4 today, 4 right now, spring today, and then summer tomorrow. 15 is our high. That is still a little cooler than seasonal. We skyrocket into the mid and upper 20s for the weekend. Family and friends are mourning the death of a 22-year-old woman killed Monday in the West End. Winnipeg police found Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man, both in critical condition, in a home on Sherbourne. Both later died. Investigators are calling it murder-suicide. Carrier's stepfather, Ken Everard, says Carrier and the man had previously been in a relationship, but she moved back in with her family 6 months ago.
She was a really happy person. She loved to laugh and she loved to joke, and we were enjoying our time with her. We were enjoying her being back home and sort of rebuilding roots and a foundation at home with us again.
Everard says Carrier went to her ex's house on Monday to collect some of her things. She thought the man would be at work, but he was at home. Police would not identify the 27-year-old man who took his own life. A local clinic is providing a way for people to test drugs for fentanyl free of charge. Test strips are the newest items in a health box vending machine at Norwest Co-op Community Health. Kazel Ebora is a primary care nurse at that clinic. She says while the strips can detect potentially deadly fentanyl, they're putting other measures in place to help stop harm.
One of our strategies to prevent overdose is also including a pamphlet in here that goes over tips on how to be safe with it, like having naloxone, never using alone. We've also made a video that we're hoping to put on our website and on the health box.
The clinic expects the addition of the test strips will help many who need it. So far, 11 test strip kits have been given out. Prime Minister Mark Carney is going to outline the immediate priorities of his new government later this morning, just 4 days after Canadians voted in the Liberals for a fourth mandate. Carney's promising to move immediately to address ongoing trade tensions with the United States, and he spoke by phone with President Donald Trump on Tuesday. Trump says the two will meet in Washington within the next week, although the PMO has yet to confirm. In honor of last weekend's street festival tragedy in Vancouver, today is an official day of mourning in BC. Among other services, a public memorial is scheduled for downtown Vancouver. 11 people were killed Saturday night when an SUV was driven into a crowd attending a Filipino festival. Another 20 were injured. A suspect has been taken into the custody at the scene and at this point has been charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. A Manitoba trucker whose license was suspended is challenging the provincial law that temporarily stopped him from driving. Balwinder Bossy argues the Highway Traffic Act's review process violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Bossy was pulled over in 2022 and asked to do a breathalyzer test. He blew into it several times, but the device didn't get a result. Police eventually charged him with refusing to provide a sample. Bossy later pleaded his case at a review hearing with Manitoba Public Insurance, but was unsuccessful. He is now being represented by MLA Mark Wasilyu, who is also a defense lawyer. Wasilyu arguing in court the system sets people like Bossy up to fail and needs to be changed. A judge will give her decision at a later date. The province says it will grant more than 3 times as many moose hunting licenses in 2025 than last year. Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says 350 licenses will be up for grabs. The province had slashed the draw to 100 last year, citing population sustainability and the needs of harvesters. A local yarn store is helping Netflix with their reboot of the TV series Little House on the Prairie. A team of 15 craftspeople are hand-making 65 garments for the beloved characters. Crystal Sockold is the owner of Pearl and Hank. She says it's the shop's largest and most challenging commission yet. When she got the order from the show's costume designer, she couldn't believe it.
Honestly, I don't even really remember. It wasn't until he came in to pick out the yarns that I was really like, okay, this is happening. This is a big deal.
The team has 5 weeks to finish before the reboot of Little House on the Prairie starts filming this summer. A pair of Canadian teams advanced last night to the next round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
2 on his birthday for William Nylander, and the Leafs headed to round 2.
Toronto Maple Leafs beating the Ottawa Senators 4-2. The Leafs will now face Florida Panthers in round 2. And then later last night in Edmonton, the hometown crowd savoring that last-second goal by the Oilers' Connor Brown, sealing a 6-4 win over Los Angeles Kings, punching their ticket into round 2, where they will go up against the Vegas Golden Knights. A win for the Winnipeg Jets tonight in St. Louis would also see the Jets advance to round 2. The Jets lead that series 3-2. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Just thinking to your story in the news there about Little House on the Prairie. Did you watch the original? Were you?
I did, yeah.
I was obsessed with it. My sister and I, like that was our show. Like we hated Nellie. She was like the bad guy anyway. She was set
She
up.
was kind of like a mean girl, right?
Yeah. And then when Mary lost her vision and then she got it back and there was an explosion. Yes, we felt every moment of Little House.
You really did.
I know.
See, I grew up on a farm, so it was just, yeah.
Oh, that's
every
funny.
day.
That's funny. Yeah, city kids, me and my sister are like, wow, imagine. Yeah, big fan of that show back in the day. All right.
There are actually rumors that it may be shot here.
Oh,
somewhere in
exciting.
Manitoba.
I'll have to call my sister. And what did you say the name of the fabric store was? Pearl and Frank and Pearl?
Hang on. Give me one. I think it was Pearl and Hank.
Pearl and Hank, not Frank.
Yeah, Pearl and Hank.
That is the greatest name ever for a store. I love that.
And Pearl, P-U-R-L, of course.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into our regional forecast here. We're in a Friday mood. You can hear it because we're talking about everything but what we should be talking about. But let's give you your forecast here and see what your day is going to be like. So we'll start in Winnipeg, mix of sun and cloud, a high of 15 degrees, low of 7. Tomorrow clearing, your Saturday high is 25. And then on Sunday, Winnipeg, we're looking for Sunday in 27. And if we're lucky, it'll stay that way for Monday when we could see 28. So really hot weekend. Make no bones about it. In Brandon, partly cloudy right now. It's -1. And for you today, mainly cloudy, high 15. Similar to Winnipeg, it'll be clear tonight, low 6. Tomorrow, sunshine, high 24. And then into Sunday, 26 degrees with sunshine for Brandon. Finally, up in Thompson, partly cloudy. It's -7. You're expecting a chance of showers this afternoon. 60% you'll see that. High of 7 degrees today. But then into tonight, overnight, low -2. Tomorrow, sun and cloud, high 8. And then on Sunday, a lot warmer for you as well in Thompson. Sunny and a daytime high of 20 degrees. So this is going to be a really warm weekend. Warmest we've seen all year. Enjoy it. Make plans. Do something with it, I say, or just sit and let the sunshine on your face. Corey Funk, the commute.
Yes, very quiet commute, as it's been pretty much all week, actually. But if you're out there, you see something going on, feel free to give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Time for business news via Zoom. Crystal Ramlichan's here with our report. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with the auto industry. The U.S. appears to be somewhat softening on tariffs. We've been covering this, obviously, but what's the very latest?
Yeah, so automobile parts compliant with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement, or CUSMA, will not be hit by President Donald Trump's tariffs. And that's according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection guidance released just yesterday. So it is the latest sign of relief for the deeply integrated North American automobile industry, which has been hit with multiple levels of tariffs. And experts have said it would be extremely cumbersome and complicated to figure out a way to only tariff non-American components of auto parts. So as we've talked about before, auto parts can cross the border between Canada and the US multiple times before a vehicle is finished. So the big three, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, have been lobbying the Trump administration for months, saying the duties would drive up prices and devastate the industry. And yesterday, the CEO of GM even warned tariffs could cost the company up to $5 billion. So Trump has claimed tariffs will bring auto manufacturing back to the U.S., but the Canadian industry has also been developing since the early 1900s. And Canada and the U.S. officially integrated the sector with the 1965 Auto Pact trade deal. And CUSMA was negotiated during the first Trump administration, of course, and included boosted supports for the North American automobile industry.
Let's keep talking about the auto sector. Your next story actually is about innovation in that industry.
Yeah, so driverless trucks are officially running their first regular long haul routes, making round trips between Dallas and Houston. So, yesterday, autonomous trucking firm Aurora announced it launched commercial service in Texas. And the company says it is the first to successfully and safely operate a commercial driverless trucking service on public roads. So the trucks are equipped with computers and sensors that can see the length of more than 4 football fields. And in 4 years of practice hauls, the truck's technology has delivered over 10,000 loads and has completed over 1,200 miles without a human in the truck. So Aurora is starting with a single self-driving truck and plans to add more by the end of the year. And, self-driving technology has continued to garner attention after over a decade of hype, especially from companies like Tesla and GM, which have poured billions into the tech. However, consumers and transportation officials have raised alarms about the safety record of autonomous vehicles. And, of course, truck drivers are worried about the threat of job losses.
And finally, this morning, an iconic brand is changing hands.
Yes, that's right. So Chef Boyardee is being sold to private equity firm Brynwood Partners for $600 million. ConAgra acquired the nearly century-old brand Chef Boyardee in 2000, but the line of shelf-stable pasta has struggled as consumers shift toward fresher, less processed food. So big food companies have been reshaping their product lineups to suit changing tastes, including shedding old standbys that no longer fit their strategies. So ConAgra, which has posted slipping sales and profits, say it's focused on growing its frozen food and snack businesses, and it has been emphasizing its protein and fiber offerings and pitching its products to users of weight management drugs. So late last year, the company rolled out a GLP-1 friendly label on certain products. But Brynwood plans to reinvigorate Chef Boyardee and expand its lineup with products that can be sold in different parts of the supermarket.
What's going on in the markets this morning?
In Europe, stocks are gaining. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are rising. Japan is up, Shanghai is down, Hong Kong is up. Oil is down 23 cents to $59.01 US per barrel. Gold is up 25.10 to $3,264.40 US per ounce. And the dollar is up almost a quarter of a cent to 72.4 cents US.
All right, Krista Lee, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
With Krista Lee Ramlakan, that is our business report. 6:43 is the time right now. You're on CBC This Morning. This is Information Radio. My name is Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Corey Funk, Sierra Sanders, and Brad Lilly's behind the glass. Heather Wells in our news center this morning. We're the warm spot in the province. It is 4 degrees in Winnipeg. We're heading for a high of 15 and still ahead on the show in the next hour of Information Radio. A Vancouver fashion designer and self-described street kid traveled all the way to Winnipeg to use her craft to draw attention to the issues surrounding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and to push for the search for the landfill for Tanya Nepanak. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about who she is. Stay tuned. That's coming up in the next hour of the show. Right now, though, let's turn to something that I just posted on Facebook. And you might be wondering why I posted this out of the blue. So I posted, would you or did you take your spouse's surname? Why or why not? So how'd you handle that? What did that discussion look like? Well, the reason for my post is the Washington Post this week did some digging into some data. It suggests that Americans in their 20s are about half as likely to adopt their spouse's surnames as were their grandparents' generation. That made us wonder, how do young adults in Canada feel about taking or giving a surname after marriage? CBC's Karsten Knox hit the streets to find out.
Yeah, it'd be nice if my partner took my last name, keep the family legacy going.
And so you would never consider taking their last name?
I mean, if they have a cool last name, I'd do it, as long as it sounds cool, has a nice ring to it, I wouldn't really care.
I am happy with my name. The whole processing of going through, changing the entire name and, documentation and stuff, I don't think it's worth it.
Okay. So what happens then if you were to have kids? How would that work out?
They can have their dad's last name.
And what did you decide when you got married?
We actually kept our previous last names. We haven't changed it.
Was it ever something you talked about or thought about?
No, actually, no.
Not actually, because we would have to change all of our documents in order for that to work. So we just decided to stick to the old ones.
Really doesn't matter to me, to be completely honest. It's just names, really. Like, it's a last name. Like, zero expectations for them to change their name to mine just because of some piece of paper.
For myself personally, I think it's important to maintain the legacy, so to speak, of my parents, especially since they're both immigrants to this country. So that's kind of factors into my feelings about it as well.
Would you ever consider hyphenating?
Well, my partner's name is already hyphenated, so that would become like a bit of a struggle. I mean, I think maybe if the names were simpler, but that practically it would be a little difficult in this circumstance.
I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure what my views are on marriage in general. I also like the idea of like a couple, if they do get married, coming up with their own last name. So like
maybe merging them?
Yeah, or just like coming up with something totally new. I don't know, that might be kind of fun.
I think it means something else to people around our age to get married, and people do it for a lot of different reasons that don't necessarily fall within the traditions that would align with changing last names. In my life, I grew up like in Alberta, so people from my childhood are getting married now, and a lot of them are following that traditional stuff. But people like closer to my circle, I find when they're talking about these things, most of the time it ends up them wanting to just keep their own last name.
I have a dynamic with my family that I don't feel a huge attachment to my surname. So if keeping my partner's surname is important to them and I enjoy their surname, I would be happy to take it. But in the relationship that I'm in now, I don't think either of us, in the prospect of getting married, plan to change our surnames at all. I have talked with a few people who have dug up dead surnames and taken that as their last name, trying to bring the name back into the public eye, which I think is insanely cool.
And would they choose ones that they have some kind of heritage connection to?
I find a lot of them do tend to find names that are attached to their heritage. Like if they have, like, so much history is lost, especially in countries outside of the Western world. So being able to go back and find those like little trinkets of history and being able to bring that back into the present day, I think is really important to a lot of people.
That's CBC's Karsten Knox speaking with some young adults in the streets of Halifax, actually, about their view of the tradition of adopting spouses' surnames. Now, I want to just throw this out to you because I'm wondering what you're thinking as you're listening to that. I did post it on Facebook, but call us if it's got you thinking. Would you or did you take your spouse's surname? Why or why not? And what did that conversation look like in your home? 788-3205.
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic, verse, or prose. The 2025 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
Well, it is 11 minutes to 7 o'clock, and Monday might feel like it was a year away, but that was Election Day just earlier this week. The makeup of the House of Commons is going to look very different when MPs head back to work. So when the House resumes on May 26th, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and former NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, for example, won't be there. Singh did step down on election night, and Poilievre lost his seat to Liberal Bruce Franjoy. Meantime, the Liberals, with their leader Mark Carney, will be taking up more real estate in the House. They gained some seats. Here in Manitoba, you might know that we also had some change. So the Conservatives at the same level, 7 seats. The Liberals went up 2. They now have 6 seats. And here in Manitoba, the NDP lost 2. So there's just Leah Gazan and Winnipeg Centre with the 1 NDP seats. But some of the ridings, 3 of them actually switched hands. Let's have a closer look at where we all go from here. Marco Vellotti is with us, editor-in-chief of iPolitics. He's here via Zoom. Hello.
Hey.
So the House resumes in a few weeks. First of all, let's talk about Pierre Poilievre. So can he remain as leader?
The short answer is yes. Conversations with people in the Conservative kind of brain trust suggest that, obviously Monday was a bit disappointing. The party was leading in the polls something like 20 to 25 points as recently as January. That being said, There are some positives that they're taking out of it. The fact that they held the Liberals to a minority government when it seemed, a couple of weeks ago, like they were on track for a big majority. The fact that they were able to make inroads with communities that, haven't been terribly receptive to the Conservative message. They've won seats in the Greater Toronto area that in ridings that were pretty diverse. They were able to flip some blue-collar ridings in southwestern Ontario. And also they were able to make inroads in BC, in parts of Quebec, in parts of Atlantic Canada. They really believe that they're creating a very, robust, more sustainable Conservative coalition. And Pierre Poilievre has a lot to do with that. That being said, of course, without a seat, it's going to hurt or diminish that kind of standing he has. But if he does stay on, I think the thinking is someone will, quickly step aside for him to run in a by-election.
Just before we dig into that a little bit, Marco, I got to ask you, what about the Conservatives, those that said they didn't vote for the Conservative Party because they didn't like Pierre Poilievre or his style of politics? They found it combative. Some Manitoban Conservatives told us they moved from the party because they feared that it wasn't the quote-unquote Conservative Party that they sort of would identify with, that they felt the party was maybe moving a little bit more right. Will that discussion come up at all, or are you hearing from those in the party where you are that they're supportive of Pierre Poilievre and they're looking at the results, they're happy with that, and so they didn't have enough losses of those other people that might express that sentiment, of not liking Pierre Poilievre to sort of cut him loose, so to speak, or get a new leader?
No, that's a great point. I think it's less on an ideological basis, but it's more so on a personality one. I think a lot of questions are going to be have been raised about just how Pierre's style maybe alienated Canadians. If he's not a drag on the party's popularity, maybe some of that could be offset by gains with certain constituencies, including blue-collar workers who responded maybe more positively to his more combative antagonistic style. But if you look at the polls, Poilievre never really had a strong favorability rating. But I think it's pretty stark seeing something from Agnes Reid, for example, that he only got more unpopular since Mark Carney took over as prime minister. And that favorability rating amongst women in particular is pretty low. So I think there's a lot of, good questions to ask about, sure, you made some inroads, sure, you made some gains. But to your point, did you also, run the risk, or do you continue to run the risk by putting him as a leader as, to alienate voters who maybe should be coming to the Conservative camp, or failing to make inroads with, crucial demographics that you need to win to form government, including women who seem to be really, really, really not liking what Pierre's offering. So those are some big questions. Sure, you made some gains on one hand, but is the leader, is this the peak, or, is this, or is this just, one, fumble as they move towards a more sustainable Conservative coalition?
What's up with this change in tone right now? We were talking about this a bit after Election Day because, that night people were booing Carney and he went, no, wait a minute. And I thought to myself, who is that person? Because that has not been his tone at all. Although he did sort of, and he said this is a moment for unity. So just to lean into that, do you think that he will do what we're talking about and maybe change his tone moving forward?
100%. I think you saw it, that's a great point. You saw it in the concession speech, that sense that, look, we didn't get to where we wanted to be. Now it's time to rally around the prime minister. We're going to be dealing with this existential threat in terms of Donald Trump and the Americans. He also knows that a lot of people in the Conservative circles are pointing fingers at him, saying one of the reasons why we lost or came up short was because you did not pivot to focusing on Donald Trump. And instead, you spent the whole campaign talking about the failures of this Liberal government. So, being kind of receptive and responsive and saying, hey, I get it, that this is something that I have to do. The results are in the poll, the election has happened. Now it's time to start kind of mending some fences, focusing on, our shared priorities, things that we can do collaboratively in the House of Commons, understanding that more combative tone that he was taking up until, I guess the concession speech may not be terribly helpful in a House of Commons, where voters, I don't think, are terribly eager to jump back into another election anytime soon. So definitely, I think that you're going to see that shift. I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of it, as we get further and further away from Election Day. He knows he's got to quell any potential dissent And the easiest way to do that is to start extending olive branches. So I expect more of that to happen in the coming weeks.
Okay, Marco, just 30 more seconds of Polyev, I promise, because I got to move to Jagmeet and Mark Carney. But I want to ask you this. Will the tone change in the House without him there? Because even if he stays on as leader and he wins a by-election and he's back in the House, it's going to be some time before all that happens. So what do you think that this is going to sound like, the absence of Polyev in the House?
Yeah, it's gonna you hit the nail right on the head. It's gonna be a huge tone shift. The Conservatives now, it may not last a long time. I assume by the fall we'll have a by-election in a safe Conservative riding that Polyev will win. But with him not being there, you have to remember so much of his political kind of clout came from his ability to hold this Liberal government's feet to the fire, to have those confrontations, to have those conflicts in the House of Commons. That was his whole brand. That I'm the guy, fighting for you. I'm the guy who doesn't understand why this Liberal government is so preoccupied on these issues that's out of sync with what Canadians want. So I expect that kind of tone with him not being there to totally shift and quiet down. Will that, be the case when he eventually, presumably wins, a by-election and gets back to the House? I don't know if we'll see that change, but definitely a different tone with Polyev not there in the House.
NDP without a leader in official party status, but a Liberal minority, government could still look to the NDP for those votes. Who might step in and lead them, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's, obviously the NDP had a historically terrible night on Monday. They lost a huge chunk of their caucus. Their popular vote total might be a historic low. It was not a good night on any regards. But if there's any silver lining to take from it, it is, the fact that they can be a kingmaker in the House of Commons. They have enough seats that the Liberals need to pass legislation and to keep them alive. And I think the second silver lining is that they also brought back a few really kind of more high-profile parliamentarians who could take a leadership role, someone like an Alexandra Boulerice in Montreal, a Heather McPherson in Alberta, someone like a Don Davies in Vancouver. There's a lot of experience that's still within this caucus, even though it's a much smaller one. So a lot of people they could tap to take on a leadership role, even in an interim basis.
We'll leave it there this morning. Thank you very much for your time, Marco, and for the whole month, all these conversations.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Marco Vellotti is the editor-in-chief of iPolitics, joining us from Ottawa. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're going to have World Report, the latest in national and international news momentarily. But there's Heather Wells popping up on our YouTube feed with our local headlines.
Good morning. We are learning more about the victim of a homicide Monday in the West End. 22-year-old Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man both died after being found in a home on Sherbourne. Investigators have called it murder-suicide. We're going to hear from Carrier's boyfriend and from her stepfather as well about what they believe was going on and how they're remembering her. The province says it is going to grant more than 3 times as many moose hunting licenses in 2025 than last year. Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says 350 licenses will be up for grabs. The province had slashed the draw to 100 last year, citing moose population sustainability and the needs of harvesters. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
4 degrees in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy. Brandon's partly cloudy and -1, and Thompson's -7, partly cloudy. Winnipeg today, mix of sun and cloud and a high of 15. Your commute is moving fine. You have a problem? 788-30-93. In the next hour of Information Radio here on CBC, a clinic in our city is giving people a do-it-yourself test to screen drugs for fentanyl. It's part of the Norwest Community Co-op Clinic's goal to promote safe consumption. We're going to get more details on how that's going. In addition, an MMIWG survivor turned fashion designer is printing right now 1,000 red shirts to raise more awareness about Tanya Nipanak, who's been missing here in our community in Manitoba for 14 years. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about that. And then at 10 to 8 this morning, we're going to talk to the head of an organization in Elmwood. That's where Councillor Jason Schreier had a big impact. One of his things he really cared about was the battle to deal with food insecurity, specifically in that part in his what was his municipality. So now that the city councillor has died, quite shockingly to most, he was 57 years old, we're going to hear more about what his legacy might be with that work. So we'll take you to Elmwood. That's coming up in the next hour. Stay here on CBC. World Report's next.
Today on The Current.
Florida. Get ready for fun in the sun. Fewer Canadians are traveling to the United States, but many are still heading south for a variety of reasons, and there are concerns about what that border crossing will be like these days. What to know about privacy and safety before traveling to the United States, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Today and for the next week, a group of elderly Canadian veterans is the center of attention in the Netherlands. They've arrived to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the country's liberation during the Second World War. The youngest of them is 96, the oldest 105. They are a few of the thousands of Canadian troops who freed the Dutch from the Nazi regime in 1945. The CBC's Chris Brown is in Apeldoorn this morning.
I think he can walk.
Their bodies are frail, but the Canadian veterans who stepped off the bus or were helped off in wheelchairs brought big smiles and firm handshakes to Apeldoorn. Among them, 101-year-old George Morash, a machine gunner who was wounded in France.
I was here for the liberation.
102-year-old George Brewster was a Spitfire pilot who flew over 60 missions during the war.
It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to have you here.
Also part of the Canadian delegation here are sailors whose ships participated in D-Day and soldiers who served in Italy, France, and the UK. Jennifer McLeod is from Veterans Affairs.
They came from all over Canada. It's a big journey for them, but they are really excited to be here, and all of them wanted to be here and are anxious to come back to the Netherlands any chance they get.
The push by Canada's army through Holland's Rhineland in February and March 1945 was the last major Allied offensive of the war, and also one of the most vicious. In total, Veterans Affairs says more than 7,600 Canadians were killed liberating the Netherlands. Many of them were buried in a cemetery near Groesbeek, where later today there will be a ceremony of commemoration. The veterans will also be celebrated at street parades in Apeldoorn and at Wageningen, where a Canadian general accepted the surrender of Nazi forces in the Netherlands 8 decades ago. Chris Brown, CBC News in Apeldoorn.
CBC News is getting a rare look inside Iran at a crucial moment in time. It's been holding dialogue with its long-standing enemy, the United States, over the fate of its nuclear program, and now there's uncertainty after a postponement of tomorrow's scheduled round of talks. Senior international correspondent Margaret Evans is in Tehran, gauging the mood.
On the streets here, in the markets, where people associate soaring prices with decades-old Western sanctions, there has been a thread of hope for a deal between Washington and Tehran. The value of the Iranian rial has dropped 50% over the past year, putting pressure on the government to ease economic pain. If they reach a deal, that would be great, says Laleh. It will benefit both sides. But there is also doubt and pride. My opinion is negative, says printer Mojtaba Abrushami.
Does he want them to make a deal or not?
Generally, we like Iran to have relations with all countries, he says. But the question is, at what price? U.S. President Donald Trump's earlier threats to bomb Iran haven't helped, although senior officials here downplay them. Ali Shamkhani is a political advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Within Trump's 100 days in office, he has been unsuccessful in many of his projects, he says, in the tariff war against Canada, in Ukraine, even Yemen. He says he's neither pessimistic nor optimistic. The outline of a deal would aim to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, much like the agreement Trump pulled out of in 2018 during his first presidency. Analysts here, including Sasan Karimi, say the first 3 rounds of talks between the old foes have been positive, but not yet substantive.
It shows that they both have enough political will to do so. But this was only the first phase.
And with new tensions emerging this week and a delay in the next round of talks, the worry is that that political will has already been used up. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
Later this morning, Prime Minister Mark Carney will outline his new government's priorities, and he will take questions from the media. It will be Carney's first Canadian media availability since his victory speech on election night. Today's news conference begins at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and you can watch it live on CBC News Network or follow along on the live page at cbcnews.ca. Donald Trump is cutting federal funding for 2 U.S. public broadcasters. In signing the executive order last night, the president declared taxpayers have a right to, quote, only fair, accurate, unbiased, and nonpartisan news coverage. The action targets NPR and PBS. The CBC's Richard Madden is following the story and joins us from Washington. Richard, what is Donald Trump's concern here?
Yeah, well, the president accuses these 2 media outlets of spreading what he calls radical woke propaganda, and he's ordered the government agency in charge of public broadcasting to cut all federal funding to NPR and PBS, and that also includes blocking indirect funding to all its local radio and TV stations. Now, Congress has already approved $1 billion for public broadcasting over the next 2 years, but Trump wants that money returned. The White House says these outlets are biased, citing its coverage of the pandemic and of Hunter Biden, the son of former President Joe Biden. Here's Texas Republican Brandon Gill.
If Fox News or any other conservative news organization came to me and asked for taxpayer money, I would tell them no. And I certainly don't think we should be funding left-wing propaganda outlets like NPR or PBS.
Now, this move against those outlets comes as the administration dismantles its global media agencies like the Voice of America or Radio Free Europe. Now, these were designed to be a model of democracy and independent news gathering in countries that restrict the press.
Richard, how is NPR responding?
Yeah, NPR had been preparing for this since Trump's election victory, and while the bulk of its funding comes from donations or membership dues, it said in a statement that federal funding is essential to their work that millions of Americans rely on. But PBS is a bit different. 15% of its budget comes from federal funding. It warns these cuts will have a devastating impact on local communities that rely on them for life-saving emergency alerts. So bottom line here, it's widely expected this executive order will be challenged in court since Congress has already approved the funding.
Richard Madden in Washington. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Die AfD ist als gesichert rechtsextremistische Partei einzustufen.
Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser announcing the country's spy agency has classified the Alternative for Germany party as extremist. AfD came second in the country's most recent election. Faeser is now warning the party represents a threat to democracy. She's pointing to its members' previous comments targeting migrants and Muslims. The party says it's all an attempt to undermine the democratic process. Australians vote in a federal election on Saturday. The key issues in Australia's vote are very similar to the issues that Canadians were contemplating just earlier this week. But unlike Canada, independent candidates are seeing a big boost in support. Phil Mercer reports from Sydney.
This is Australia's cost of living election. The economy is forecast to slow down.
Rent is the major problem.
I feel so for younger generation. They can't buy a house.
Peter Dutton, the Conservative opposition leader, is battling the Labour Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for power.
You can't stand here telling people that they're much better off after 3 years.
You have identified a range of issues, but you have no solutions.
Standing up to the Trump administration is a key campaign issue, as is the rising dominance of China.
The biggest concern from our intelligence agencies is in relation to the Communist Party of China.
China is the major power in the region which is seeking to increase its influence.
Governments have pretended Australia is in good shape by using immigrants' wealth as the government's achievement.
Immigration is another big issue, so is climate change. At the last election, a third of voters rejected the 2 major parties. Election analyst John Black says in recent years the governing Labour Party has seen its support drain away.
Its traditional strongholds are gradually declining, and that's what's causing the instability in outcomes.
Opinion polls suggest Australia could have its first minority government in over a decade after Saturday's election. Phil Mercer for CBC News, Sydney.
18 million Australians are eligible to cast a ballot. Voting is compulsory in that country, but in Australia, voting day means hot dogs, or as they call them, democracy sausages.
It's the sausage of democracy, the symbol of our land.
It's a long-standing tradition. Community groups often run fundraiser barbecues outside polling stations. The voters can stop after they cast their ballots and buy a sausage on white bread with onions and ketchup. Folk singer Daniel Kelly even wrote a song about it.
The two main parties standing, they're pretty much the same. Neither cares for the refugees.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Years, our democracy, it just might end in tears.
Who knew? The sausage of democracy. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday Morning Show. You're on CBC's Information Radio. We're going to have a really nice weekend here in Winnipeg. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. We're starting cloudy, though, this Friday morning. Weather in a moment. This hour on the program, a Vancouver fashion designer and self-described street kid traveled to Winnipeg to use her craft to draw attention to issues surrounding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We're going to hear that story. Also this hour on the program, a clinic here in Winnipeg is giving people a do-it-yourself test to screen drugs for fentanyl. We're going to hear more about what's happening over at Norwest Community Co-op with that tool. And then at 10 to 8 this morning, as Winnipeggers remember the life and legacy of late Councillor Jason Schreier, who died at the age of 57, news came this week. We're going to hear from an organization in Elmwood that worked closely with him to battle the problem of food insecurity. We'll ask them about his legacy. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's in with other news headlines and stories. 7:11 is the time. Good morning.
Good morning. Family and friends are mourning the death of a 23-year-old woman killed Monday in the West End. Winnipeg police found Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man both in critical condition in a home on Sherbourne. Both later died. Investigators calling it a murder-suicide. Carrier's stepfather, Ken Everard, says Carrier and the man had previously been in a relationship. And we are going to tell you a little yarn about a Winnipeg yarn store helping bring to life the Netflix reboot of Little House on the Prairie. That's coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Weather now. We are still the warm spot in the province, but we've lost a degree. We're 3 degrees right now in Winnipeg. You can see on the maps that there's a little bit of cloud cover out there. In Winnipeg, it's presenting as mostly cloudy in the city. Our high today, though, 15 degrees, mix of sun and cloud. And then by the end of the weekend, we could see highs of 25 and 27 with sunshine. So it's going to be a beauty of a weekend, I got to say. Let's get into what's happening in the morning commute. Though first, can we just have a moment for the sausage of democracy?
Yes, I know. What? I know, I love it.
And then there was a song about it?
I know.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Which made me smile.
And I'm hungry.
I know.
For democracy.
Shh, that was a slow one for you.
Yes.
Yeah, fun though. The commute this morning, Corey.
It's been very quiet this morning. Haven't heard of any major issues out there, but I know now that the weather's warming up, construction season is in full bloom. Mm-hmm. So if you do see something going on, some construction throwing you off on your commute this morning, do give me a call, or if you're walking, bike, and driving, let me know what you're seeing out there. That number 204-788-3093.
Up next on CBC, a clinic in Winnipeg is giving people a free way to test their drugs for fentanyl. A clinic in Winnipeg is giving people a free way to test their drugs for fentanyl, so people know whether or not the deadly opioid is in their drugs before they take them. And the tests are being distributed in a pretty unique way. Madison Eldridge is a journalism student who's been interning here with CBC Manitoba, and she's in studio to tell us more about how all of this works. Good morning.
Good morning.
So can you describe how this clinic is distributing these test strips?
Yeah, so when you walk into Norwest Community Co-op Clinic, you could almost miss it. But tucked into the corner is this large, 6-foot-tall touchscreen box. So there's various messages that appear on it with some photos and messages, again, that are warning people about the toxic drug supply. If you think about those like digital maps that you can find in the mall, you like search up the store and where you're going, it kind of looks like that, except for it's a vending machine. So this is Norwest's Health Box. It gives out free harm reduction and wellness supplies. You can scroll through all the products that are inside. It shows little pictures of them. And some of the stuff includes like HIV test kits, granola bars, hygiene kits, naloxone, and of course the newest is the fentanyl test strip kits. To use it, you just have to sign in or create an account. You choose the year you were born, your favorite color, and an animal, and then you can choose any items you want without being questioned. And Jennifer Gourlay, who's a primary care nurse with the clinic, she says this privacy is really important.
People who may use substances or use drugs may feel judged by the healthcare system. And so if they have to walk up to the front desk to ask for supplies, it's that interaction that may prevent them. There may be some shame, some stigma, some embarrassment with it. And this helps to reduce that part.
So tell us about the newest item that to be added to the box, this fentanyl test strip.
Yeah, so I actually sat down with Kaisel Abora. She's another primary care nurse from Norwest. And after taking the kit out of the vending machine, she actually unpacked the kit for us.
Comes with a measuring cup, a 30 ml measuring cup, 3 fentanyl test strips, a pamphlet, a stirring stick, a little baggie, and the client would have their substance. You could use it with liquid, powder, rocks.
Yeah, so the test strip itself, it's like a small white strip, and I think pool owners will understand what I mean. You know those water strips that you can use to test your pool water?
Yeah, to see how much chlorine or what's going on in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like that. It's about that size. But to do the test, after you peel open the package, you're going to take a tiny scoop of the drug sample, like the size of like a head of a match, so it's really small, and you mix it into a little cup of water, and then the test strip goes in there, and you're going to hold it in there for 15 seconds. And then, unlike the water testing kit, though, it doesn't reveal fun colors. So it's 1 red line for a positive result, and then 2 lines for a negative result. And these test strips, they can be bought on Amazon. They're also used by other drug testing facilities. So it's not a new invention, but it is new to the Norwest Health Box.
Do they have a sense how effective, the test strips are?
Well, the Norwest kit comes with 3 tests because the results can be unreliable. Health Canada also warns about the limits of these tests because initially they were developed to test urine for fentanyl, for forensic purposes. So they're not 100% reliable when testing street drugs. False negatives and false positives do happen, and there's a list of factors that can impact the results, including the room temperature and the expiry date of the test. So this unreliability can give people a false sense of confidence that the drugs they're using are free of fentanyl.
The other thing too is, although it can detect fentanyl, it can't detect some fentanyl analogs, such as carfentanil. And so that's really important because despite using this, if you do get a negative result, an overdose is still possible. So there are definite limitations to the tests, but again, it is another harm reduction tool that adds to the other initiatives that we do here at Norwest.
Now, some people might be wondering if the test doesn't guarantee reliability, then why use it?
Yeah, so Abora explained that even with its limitations, the test still promotes safe consumption. There's a 2022 report by 9 Circles, which is another local health center, and they did a pilot program to test these strips and how effective they are. And it said that some substance users who found fentanyl in their drugs actually changed their consumption habits. So some would take less of the drug, diluted it, or they chose not to use it at all if they found fentanyl in it. So this is seen as a positive tool to help prevent overdose, but there is another thing to consider. So even though some substance users may be using the strip to avoid fentanyl, Abora says she's aware that others may be using the test to find it.
Some clients or some people who use drugs are looking to use an opioid, and so some people use it to see if there is fentanyl, and they will use it. And so one of our strategies to prevent overdose is also including a pamphlet in here that goes over tips on how to be safe with it, like having naloxone, never using alone. we've also made a video that we're hoping to put on our website and on the health box to also help prevent any overdose.
That's super interesting. What kind of feedback is the clinic getting about the new strips?
Yeah, so Gourlay says that the feedback of the community is the most important thing about the box. It was based on the needs of the community that these strips were added to the box in the first place. And she says that the nurses at the clinic are open to incorporating other items based on the needs of the community and what they're saying. It's really a team effort to keep the box up and running in the clinic. Talking with Gourlay, I could really see her eyes light up when she talked about all of the work they're doing to try and help make these tools more accessible at Norwest. So the nurses do stock the box twice a day. They spend the time putting the packages together. And Gourlay says that they do this to help make harm reduction supplies more accessible, especially to more vulnerable communities who maybe can't afford to buy these items on their own.
25% of the access is women, identify as women. Another 26% identify as Indigenous. Another 26% identify as people who use substances. So that's who who's accessing the machine. And we're hoping that by them coming into the building, accessing this machine, they interact a lot with security, with our front desk. And we're really hoping that having access to this will builds trust, so they can come in and access healthcare other services that we provide as well.
Yeah, so Abora says so far 11 test strip kits have been given out since they were added to the health box.
All right, thanks for coming in with us, Madison. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
In studio on this story. And you can read more about the Norwest Health Box on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. 7:21 a.m., 3 degrees in Winnipeg. You're thinking about the Jets game tonight? Jets on the road. They could get it done and beat the Blues. We'll see if that happens. To get us to talk to Scott Reguera about the game, here's Boy Golden in 3 scenes.
Drove the old 95 into the city. 6 in the morning, must have been about -50. We hit some ice, almost died. Right about then I realized I didn't want to mess around no more. Sat down on the back porch with a buddy. I looked him in the eye. I said, baby, if you love me, when you're down low, you call on me, just say my name, and there I'll be. Yeah, when you're down low, you call on me, just say my name, there I'll be. It was written on your face, sitting in the kitchen. You were in a state, thinking about your true love, wishing you were kissing. Well, my dear friend, I'll tell you this, it's a beautiful thing to have someone to miss. Yes, it is. Woke up, read the news, and it pissed me off. I said, honey, let's go downtown. We could join the march, have a little walk. Well, I held your hand, and you held mine, and we both felt better for a short, sweet time. Yeah, despite the cops and their pipelines, we both felt better for a short, sweet time. Sitting back in the cut, playing my guitar. Not thinking about much, just wondering where you are. I try to make it through the next few lines without crying. Baby, I'm trying. I guess I got my fix of the good life. I'm gonna drive out to the sticks in my old 95. I'm gonna meet you there. Good God, I swear I can't get true love just anywhere. Gonna meet you there. Good God, I swear I can't get true love just anywhere.
Pretty good lick. Hey, that's Winnipeg's Boy Golden and Three Scenes, nominated for a Juno this year. It is 7:25 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Thanks for joining us here on the show. Friday, 3 degrees, mostly cloudy, and there's a hockey game tonight. Maybe you heard. Scott Reguera is with us now to talk more about the concerns heading in for the Winnipeg Jets. Hi, Scott.
Hey there, Marcy.
Well, let's just talk about Scheifele. Jets trying to finish off St. Louis tonight. Remember, they finished off the last game well without Scheifele, but this is not welcome news. What do we know?
No. The Jets' first-line center got hurt in the last game, likely on that cheap shot hit by Braden Shen. So will there be retribution this evening? Here's Winnipeg coach Scott Arniel.
Talking about old-time hockey? You know what you're talking about? Slap shot? You know what? Obviously... I vented myself. We've talked to the league. They know how we feel. This is playoff hockey. It takes on a whole new life, and it's pressure on players, coaches, referees, the league. So it's just move on. We're on. We know where we're at right now. We know Scheif won't be with us. Now we just got to focus on winning that next one.
Always a fine line, Marcy, about sending a message that cheap shots won't be tolerated and not taking silly penalties. So we'll see how that plays out tonight. With Scheifele out, it'll likely, I would think, be Vlad Nemestikov taking his place on the first line at center. He was great, to your point, in the last game, stepping in. So we'll see there. The coach wouldn't commit to whether it'll be Nemestikov, maybe Cole Perfetti stepping in. He's been good too. But that's one thing to watch for. With Scheifele's guile gone, though, Arniel says it'll be that much more of a meat and potatoes approach for his team tonight. He used the quote, "We're going to get those greasy goals by fighting for every inch." Now, whether he means that literally, we shall see. A spot in the second round against either Colorado or Dallas is at stake. A puck drop tonight, 7 o'clock.
Come on, Jets. Just be fast, be focused, shoot from far, and keep shooting, because they will not stop. And we know that from watching those games in the Blues house, right? Okay. Meantime, playoffs back in the Professional Women's Hockey League as well.
Yeah, and there should be plenty of Canadian content there as well. I failed to mention that aside from the Jets, the Oilers and the Leafs won last night, so they're going to the second round. So Winnipeg's tried to make it a Canadian hat trick.
It's okay that you didn't mention the Leafs. You're on with Winnipeg, after all.
But, the Oilers, In any case, back to the PWHL. There should be plenty of Canadian content there as well. Tomorrow is the final day of the regular season. Montreal, Marcy, needs just a point to finish first overall. If they don't get it and Toronto wins its game, it'll be the Scepters finishing first. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Toronto is hosting Ottawa tomorrow, with the Charge needing a victory for a chance to make the postseason themselves. Here's the message Ottawa coach Carla McLeod is sending to her players.
We have our own ticket. We have the ticket in our hands still. That hasn't changed, and so it's just making sure that we're learning from this experience and recognizing now, we're a little bit up against the wall. We have a ticket, though. So, if you get excited to win a hockey game, right, versus that fear of losing a hockey game, we talked about it in the second intermission, it changes your mentality. So we got to make sure we're excited to go win a hockey game on Saturday.
So we are not quite done yet with Hockey Battles of Ontario. And here's something to consider. Depending on how things go around the league tomorrow, Toronto could finish first, and because of that unique PWHL rule, they'd get to choose their first-round opponent, which could be Ottawa. It should be all very poetic.
Let's talk curling before you go. Canada's competing at the World Mixed Doubles event in curling.
Yeah, and so far so good for Jocelyn Peterman and Brett Gallant. Despite a narrow loss to the Scots yesterday, they have a record of 7-2, so easily through to the playoffs. Here's Peterman.
It's a bit of an emotional roller coaster this week, but I think we've been doing a good job of staying pretty even keel, and we're supporting each other and really embracing the atmosphere here.
Here would be Fredericton, New Brunswick, where the Worlds are taking place. Peterman and Gallant's first playoff match goes today against Estonia. And they'll go into it, Marcy, with less pressure than they might have. That's because of results yesterday, which guaranteed Canada a spot directly through at next year's Olympics. And since Gallant and Peterman have already won the Canadian Olympic trials, they're going to be the ones wearing the maple leaf in Cortina and in Milano. There are worse places for a work trip I can think of, especially for a married couple, as they are.
We will talk to you on Monday about who the Jets are going to face in the second round. See what I did there?
Very nice. Very nice.
Take care.
Just here, I'll touch the wood for you.
Yeah, I know. All right. Take care, Scott. Thank you.
You too.
That's Scott Reguer with us. Morning Sports on CBC. We have a small traffic, I shouldn't say small, we have a traffic note to pass along to you here before the news. Naomi called the commuter line, so northbound Route 90 at Tuxedo. 2 cars are blocking the left and the middle lanes, so it looks like a bit of a fender bender issue, but keep right. There are backups building those, so this is northbound Route 90 at Tuxedo. 788-3093 with any updates. Your news on CBC is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's a little chilly out there. 3 degrees right now. We are a day away from feeling some summer heat. But for today, it's Friday, and it's going to be lovely. Mix of sun and clouds, a high today of 15. Unexpected and devastating. That's how friends and family described the murder of a 22-year-old woman on Monday. Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man both died after being found in a West End home on Sherbourne. Investigators are calling it murder-suicide. Carrier's boyfriend, Payden Shelton, says she went to her ex's house on Monday to collect some of her belongings. She thought the man would be at work, but he was home.
She texted me and a couple of her friends letting us know that he was there and she was just going to try and get as much packed up as she could. I believe it was about within 30 minutes to an hour after that, there were police there.
Shelton calls Carrier the most genuine, caring, and sweetest person he ever met. A Winnipeg clinic is giving people a free way to test their drugs for fentanyl. It's part of a health box vending machine at Norwest Co-op Community Health. It gives wellness and harm reduction supplies. The newest item, fentanyl test strips. Jennifer Gourlay is a primary care nurse at the clinic. She says the box is important to reduce stigma.
People who may use substances or use drugs may feel judged by the healthcare system. And so if they have to walk up to the front desk to ask for supplies, it's that interaction that may prevent them.
Gourlay hopes the anonymity of the machine encourages people to access the tools and the help they need. A Manitoba truck driver whose license was suspended is challenging the provincial law that temporarily stopped him from driving. Balwinder Bossy argues the Highway Traffic Act's review process violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Bossy was pulled over in 2022 and asked to do a breathalyzer test. He blew into it several times, but the device didn't get a result. Police eventually charged him with refusing to provide a sample. Bossy later pleaded his case at a review hearing with the Manitoba Public Insurance, but was unsuccessful. He is now being represented by MLA Mark Wasilyu, who is also a defense lawyer. Wasilyu argues in court the system sets people like Bossy up to fail and needs to be changed. A judge will give her a decision at a later date. Prime Minister Mark Carney will outline immediate priorities of his new government later this morning, just 4 days after Canadians voted the Liberals in for a fourth mandate. Carney promising to move immediately to address, among other things, the ongoing trade tensions with the United States. On Tuesday, he spoke by phone with President Donald Trump, with Trump saying the two will meet in Washington within the next week. However, that has yet to be confirmed by the Prime Minister's office. In the wake of last weekend's street festival in Vancouver, the tragedy there, today is an official day of mourning across BC. Among other services, a public memorial is scheduled for downtown Vancouver. 11 people were killed last Saturday night when an SUV was driven into a crowd at a Filipino festival. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. The province says it will grant more than 3 times as many moose hunting licenses in 2025 than last year. Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says 350 licenses will be up for grabs. The province had slashed the draw to 100 last year, citing moose population sustainability and the needs of harvesters. The move sparked court challenges from Pimicikamak Cree Nation and the Manitoba Wildlife Federation. Those cases are still waiting a decision after a 2-day hearing last fall. Bushy says about 10% of the 2-game hunting areas will be exclusive to Indigenous hunters. The province will also work to create a wildlife advisory board with Pimicikamak. Well, breathing new life into an old show. Netflix is doing a reboot of Little House on the Prairie. The show, set in the 1800s, ran for 9 seasons in the 1970s. It follows the life of the Ingalls family on their farm. Well, a Winnipeg yarn store is playing a big role in this new series. Michaela Stonehouse is part of a 15-person team, and her job? Creating 12 clothing pieces, including mitts and garters. The hardest part for her is understanding the stitch work used 2 centuries ago.
Following the pattern, knitting, seeing if it looks like the photo, if it doesn't, adjusting and making those things, because, the yarn is going to be slightly different, but it's as close as we can get it.
The team has 5 weeks to finish the yarn-filled order before the reboot starts filming this summer. Takes you back a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, my sister and I watching, playing, pretending we were in a hayloft, being Mary and Laura, running across the field to Michael Landon.
I'd cross a field for Michael Landon.
I watched a lot of Little House on the Prairie otherwise. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Super interesting about the stitches and such. All right, let's get into what's going on in the regional forecast. This is CBC's Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Corey Funk, Sierra Sanders, and Brad Lillies. Thank you for joining us today on the show. In Winnipeg right now, 3 degrees. If we look at the maps that are just coming up on YouTube, you can see that there's a little bit of cloud cover. In downtown Winnipeg, there's some bright sun trying to crack through those clouds. We're going to be with a mix of sun and cloud for most of today. A high of 15 today in Winnipeg, partly cloudy tonight, low 7. Tomorrow, clearing in the city and a high of 25. And on Sunday, a high of 27 in the sunshine. So we should have a really, really nice looking weekend ahead here. This is the regional forecast, so let's dip into Brandon and up to Thompson. First to Brandon, where right now it's -1. For you today, mainly cloudy. It should clear this afternoon, high 15. And then similar to Winnipeg, clear tonight, low 6. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 24. On Sunday, sunny and 26 in Brandon expected. And finally, in Thompson, -4 right now, mostly cloudy. You're a little late to get to the warm party, but it'll happen for you as well. Today, a 60% chance of showers in Thompson, a high of 7. Mainly cloudy tonight, those chance of showers early in the evening, then a low down to -2. Tomorrow, sun and cloud, high of 8. And then you creep up to a high of 20 degrees in Thompson on Sunday with sunshine. Corey Funk has popped in to update the commute.
Got a call from Naomi, probably just under 10 minutes or so ago. She says, northbound Route 90 at Tuxedo, it looked like it just happened. There was a fender bender there, it looks like. And now those 2 cars are blocking the far left kind of turning lane and the middle lane. So keep right to get around that. There's backup starting to build. So that's northbound Route 90 at Tuxedo. That's the only issue I heard about out there. But if you see something else going on, be like Naomi, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Next on the program, a Vancouver-based fashion designer is on a mission to print 1,000 red shirts to raise awareness for Tanya Nepanak. Now, Nepanak went missing here in 2011. It's believed she was killed and her remains were taken to Brady Road landfill. A search was done in 2012, but was canceled after 6 days, and to date, she has not been found. Her story resonated with a woman in BC who goes by the name Pretty East Fan. As a former, quote, street kid, MMIWG survivor and mother, she says she wanted to act. She's now, as mentioned, a fashion designer, and she shared her story. CBC's Sid Sundance Horshig attended her shirt printing workshop here in Winnipeg.
You're going to have to strongly but gently separate the paper. My name's Marie, but I go by Pretty East Fan. I am a MMIWG survivor. I was trafficked when I was 12 and a half. I was fortunate to get out of that lifestyle and survive. The image is red-black image of Tanya Nepanak's face with MMIW over her mouth and a faded handprint. Below Tanya Nepanak's face is a picture of her son and her daughter. Fashion has kind of followed me through my life. Incarcerated, I was taught how to sew in jail. It's just a lot of different fashion has come into my life in very bad places. I got hired to a policing center as their youth coordinator and screen printer. They trained me how to screen print, and I realized that with orange shirt day, I actually had a couple of designs go viral that were orange shirt based, and the awareness that was brought and the people that came and were like, oh my God, we love this design, So it clicked very fast that fashion and advocacy go really well together. Placed it on the shirt, same idea, cheesecloth. I was doing some advocacy in Vancouver, And I kept noticing that Tanya's name was popping up. I started to do a little more research into it. And I found out that she was in the landfill. They knew she was in the landfill. And they searched for 6 days, and that was it. So that really bothered me, is that you could actually know somebody's there, but you give up on looking for that person. It seemed very inhumane. How could I make fashion bring Tanya's name into the spotlight again? What can I do? I decided we will do 1,000 red shirts.
My name is Robin Johnston. I am MMIWG 2S Plus advocate. It's important that I'm here because I discovered through this journey that Tanya was ignored for many years, and her name was not being said. And I felt it was important that we remind everyone of who is in the Brady landfill, and that's Tanya Niepenak, and we need to find her.
I can't just sit there and just let this keep going, you know, when there's something that I can do about it. There's something everybody could do about it. But in my heart, I know that I would be wrong if I didn't come here to do this. I just know it would be wrong, and I would have to live with that.
My name's Barb Young. It's a crisis in Winnipeg, and I'm from Vancouver originally, so there's a lot of mistreatment to women and to Indigenous women, and people go missing, and some people don't seem to care, and we need to get people to wake up and get out there and help.
We need to forget, like, a lot of things that we were taught that are not ours. You know, like lateral violence, all of these things. We need to forget that, and we need to come together for the bigger picture, which is to support our people. I know that feeling of knowing you're gonna die and nobody's there. And, sorry, if I was in the landfill, I would want someone to come get me. Her kids, she has kids. You know, I would want someone to come get me and take me to my kids. You know, take me home. It only seems right. When I talk about the long-term effects of intergenerational trauma, you see her children. I put her children in the image because people need to see that these little kids are going to grow into adults and they're going to suffer because we couldn't bring their mom home.
That story was put together by CBC's Sid Sundance Horshig and video producer Warren Kay as well. The workshop 1,000 Red Shirts for Tanya Niepenak is soon wrapping up, but you may be able to get one of the shirts for free at a rally that's happening Monday for the National Day for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. You can also check out more of Pretty East Van's fashion designs on her Instagram page. It's under @PrettyEastVan. And I just want to mention that Tanya Niepenak's family is once again holding hope that a landfill search for her remains will happen after a meeting they had with Premier Wab Kinew. The meeting was prompted as the province has committed to searching the Brady Road landfill for the remains of Ashley Shingoose.
Breaking this hour, CBC News brings you all the local, national, and international news you need to make sense of your world.
I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement.
Now's your chance to enjoy a free preview of Canada's source for breaking and live news.
The air raid sirens went off.
Find out why more Canadians choose CBC News Network over any other Canadian news channel. The CBC News Network free preview. On now.
It is 7:43 a.m. It's your Friday morning show here on CBC. And coming up after 8 o'clock, we're going to hear from 3 Gen Z panelists in Manitoba, all with very different political views. We're going to get their debrief on the federal election. But next, a little bit of music from Winnipeg singer-songwriter Slow Leaves, who writes lonely songs, they say, as a way to feel less lonely. He's leaning further into that idea with the release of his new acoustic album. It's called In Solitude for Company. This is Slow Leaves with the acoustic version of American Band.
I wanna be in an American band, see the bright light shining from the back of the van, and we'll keep on rolling just as long as we can. Alright, alright. Another big picture to remember you by, 'cause it all goes down in the blink of an eye. So you could keep on sleeping in the passenger side. I'll drive. Ooh, daydream, ooh, save me, dreaming with eyes wide open. I don't know where I'm going, I'll just put my soul in and tear it wide open. Here's to the art of hoping, wish it was you I was holding. I'll just put my toes in. Will we ever see the ocean? I want a piece of that American dream, but without selling out, if you know what I mean. And I wrote a great part for the tambourine. Alright. It up when the sun goes down, and we'll keep on rolling till the next small town. But we won't stop for gas till the light comes on. Bone dry, it's bone dry. Ooh, daydream, ooh, save me, dreaming with eyes wide open. I don't know where I'm going, I'll just put my soul in and tear it wide open. Here's to the art of hoping, wish it was you I was holding. I'll just put my toes in. Will we ever see the ocean? Fall in love again, ocean, and fall in love again, ocean, fall in love again, ocean. I wanna see the ocean. Tell my baby I'm coming back home instead. I don't feel good, I miss my own sweet bed. I don't feel so good no more. Roll the windows down and turn it around. I don't wanna see the next town, 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 ocean.
I would mash that up with Roy Orbison's Pretty Woman. I had that going through my head the whole time I heard. He's got the same kind of warble in the bottom of his voice. Great acoustic, beautiful version of that tune. That's Slow Leaves, an American band. And that version of the song is featured on his new acoustic album called In Solitude for Company.
Patio season is upon us, and the Winnipeg Comedy Festival is hosting some serious fun at the Gas Station Arts Center patio April 30th to May 4th. Featuring the Great Comedy Showdown, the music of DJ JPQ, and the CBC Fun Zone of patio games. Free, all ages, every festival day. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival, seriously funny. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
It was fun on that patio. I was there on Tuesday night. It was it's really nice to be out and about in Winnipeg and celebrating in the village and in that lovely venue. It was packed on Tuesday night for the event that I was at. So lots of awesome comics in town, of course. Enjoy the festival. You got a beautiful weekend to get out and if you have tickets to some of the things this weekend. Well, next on the show, let's turn our attention to shocking matters and serious matters, as I like to say. Winnipeggers continue to remember the life and the legacy of Elmwood East Kildonan councillor Jason Schreier. there. The shock came because he died earlier this week. He was just 57 years old. We still this morning don't know the cause of death as people continue to come to terms with the news. According to his fellow counselors, one of Schreier's biggest passions was food security. And before he died, he was working closely with the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation on a special project to address the issue in that community. Leilani Esteban Villarba is the executive director at Chalmers and is with us now. Good morning, Leilani.
Good morning.
So how involved was Councillor Schreier with your organization? I heard he was down visiting you guys a lot.
Oh, Jason was part of this Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal family, so he was there almost every other day. Yeah.
I heard he joked about even setting up an office there. Is that right?
Actually, I think that was a serious thing because yeah, he was there so often that and he loved being with the community and being able to reach out and talk to people one-on-one. And so everybody at the center knew who he was, and everybody at the center has had conversations with him, and that's why it's so hard for all the people who are part of the center. When we heard the news, it was devastating to all of us. It was quite a shock. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. I've been down to your center. I mean, obviously, everyone there is it's so supportive. It's a busy place where there's everything from play groups to help with food, as we mentioned. There's a kitchen there. People drop in and just fellowship and companionship. So, how did the news reach you guys? Have you been supporting each other?
Well, I don't know. I found out earlier, and it was I couldn't believe it. Most of us we just couldn't believe it at first, and so the shock and the fact that we were just I literally had texted him that morning to ask about the project that we were working on.
I'm so sorry, Leilani.
Mm-hmm.
What was the project? Tell us about the food security program that you were working on in a way that, obviously now will become his legacy. So what were you working on?
Right now, the support that he gave us is going to put I don't know if you remember 243 Henderson and the corner lot there. That was a gas station before, and then Suncor allowed CNRC to use it as a community space. And we are going to put 2 storage containers, climate-controlled storage containers on it. He called them train cars. So 2 40-foot train cars, and they are going to store food rescue items that are going to be diverted from the landfill. And we've partnered with Climate Change Connection, and we are going to ensure that food doesn't get wasted, and perfectly great, good food that can still be consumed. And yeah, so I don't know.
So people could go to those containers is the idea once they're set up. And is it a pay what they can situation?
That's right. So it's a food desert in Elmwood. Our biggest grocery store shut down last year, and there isn't anywhere that you could get access to affordable, fresh or foods and within walking distance of the community. So Jason was really intent on making it happen, like anything food related and barrier free and accessible to the community. He was all about food. And so when Climate Change Connection came to him at one of the council meetings, he jumped on it and he said, we can do this, and we can do this with Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal. And so
got on board and made it
got
happen.
on board and
Yeah.
did it.
When do
And
you hope? When do you hope? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Leilani.
we were hoping that we were going to do it last year. Like, it started last year. We wanted it in by September, but all the stuff that needed to be done. So we are hoping to get it done before the end of July.
So you're aiming for this summer?
For this summer, yeah.
It will be difficult, obviously, when that day comes and Jason Schreier isn't there to celebrate with the community. But what do you have any special plans to remember him at all, or this is all very fresh? So I know that people are still absorbing what has happened here, but I'm just curious whether or not maybe that is going to bear his name, that project, or if that's something you might like to see.
Absolutely. If you knew Jason was full of energy, full of life, full of everything, like everything fun. He brought energy. And so, yes, so the corner has another building across the street that we are hoping to purchase, and what we would like to do is call it Jason Schreier's Corner. So the building at 241 Henderson, and then the lot at 243 Henderson. So it is literally Johnson and Henderson. That will be Jason Schreier's Corner.
Thank you so much, Leilani, for remembering your counselor and the efforts he made around food security in your part of Winnipeg. I think if that comes to fruition, Jason Schreier's Corner, what a lovely honor that would be in legacy, especially given that it comes from the constituents who knew him. Appreciate your time this morning. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
That's Leilani Esteban Villarba on with us live this morning, Executive Director of the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. Jason Schreier, City Councillor for Elmwood EK, passed away at the age of 57. We still don't know a cause of death. If you want to read more about his legacy on council and some of the other projects he worked on in addition to food insecurity, you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba. Also, I always mention that we're on YouTube. You can always go back on YouTube to watch interviews. You can go to our CBC Listen app, and there was quite an emotional interview with Ross Eady, a fellow councillor who was very close with Jason Schreier yesterday on the show. So we have a number of ways that people in the city are coming to terms with what has happened and also remembering him. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock now, and Heather Wells joins us with other headlines.
Good morning. Well, family and friends are mourning the death of a 22-year-old woman who died Monday in the West End. Winnipeg police found Nadia Flett Carrier and a man, both in critical condition, in a home on Sherbourne. Both later died. Investigators are calling it murder-suicide. Carrier's stepfather, Ken Everard, says Carrier and the man had previously been in a relationship. A local clinic is providing a way for people to test drugs for fentanyl free of charge. Test strips are the newest items in a health box vending machine at Norwest Co-op Community Health. Kazel Ibora, a primary care nurse at the clinic, says the strips can detect potentially deadly fentanyl. And the clinic expects the addition of those test strips will help many people in need. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We have a commute note to pass along here. There's been got a call from the traveling Transconian, and a multi-vehicle collision has happened blocking Marion Street approaching St. Mary's. So this is right outside the Dominion Centre by the McDonald's there. Emergency vehicles are on scene. So she says it's probably best to avoid the area right now. Multi-vehicle collision blocking Marion approaching St. Mary's. Thanks for the call, 788-3093. Now, we did have an earlier call about Route 90 at Tuxedo. I'm not sure if there's still a problem in that area, but you can always update us at 788-3093. Weather-wise, mix of sun and cloud today, high of 15 for our Friday here, and it's mostly cloudy in Winnipeg right now, and it is 3 degrees current temperature. Coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, now that the federal election is over, how do some young people feel about the outcome? Well, we put together a Gen Z panel with different political views for a bit of a debrief, and that's coming up here live in studio after 8. Stay with us. You're on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. World Report is next.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
The beloved singer-songwriter Sarah Harmer recently got the Humanitarian Award from the Junos. Sarah will be here to talk about her journey, when she realized she could lend her voice to issues she cares about, and why at a time of global unrest, it's important to look in our own backyards.
It's like they say, action is the antidote to despair.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Fewer Canadians are traveling to the United States, but many are still heading south for a variety of reasons, and there are concerns about what that border crossing will be like these days, what to know about privacy and safety before traveling to the United States, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. A pipe band from Kelowna, BC is in the Netherlands for the 80th anniversary of that country's liberation during the Second World War. They're part of a large Canadian contingent marking the event. Liberation Day is Monday, but this hour there's a memorial at the War Cemetery where 2,300 Canadian soldiers are buried. More than 7,600 Canadians lost their lives in the fight to free the Netherlands. Veterans from those battles are present there today. The CBC's Chris Brown spoke to some of them in Apeldoorn.
I think he can walk.
Their bodies are frail, but the Canadian veterans who stepped off the bus or were helped off in wheelchairs brought big smiles and firm handshakes to Apeldoorn. Among them, 101-year-old George Morash, a machine gunner who was wounded in France.
I was here for the liberation.
102-year-old George Brewster was a Spitfire pilot who flew over 60 missions during the war.
It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to have you here.
Also part of the Canadian delegation here are sailors whose ships participated in D-Day and soldiers who served in Italy, France, and the UK. Jennifer McLeod is from Veterans Affairs.
They came from all over Canada. It's a big journey for them, but they are really excited to be here, and all of them wanted to be here and are anxious to come back to the Netherlands any chance they get.
The push by Canada's army through Holland's Rhineland in February and March 1945 was the last major Allied offensive of the war, and also one of the most vicious. In total, Veterans Affairs says more than 7,600 Canadians were killed liberating the Netherlands. Many of them were buried in a cemetery near Groesbeek, where later today there will be a ceremony of commemoration. The veterans will also be celebrated at street parades in Apeldoorn and at Wageningen, where a Canadian general accepted the surrender of Nazi forces in the Netherlands 8 decades ago. Chris Brown, CBC News in Apeldoorn.
The 80th anniversary of Liberation Day falls on Monday, and you can join myself and the CBC's Nella Ayed to bring you a wrap of the events commemorating the Canadians who made the ultimate sacrifice. That's on Monday at 9 p.m., 9:30 in Newfoundland on CBC Radio and the CBC Listen app. CBC News is getting a rare look inside Iran at a crucial moment in time. It's been holding dialogue with its long-standing enemy, the United States, over the fate of its nuclear program. But now there's uncertainty after the next round of talks between the two was abruptly postponed. Senior international correspondent Margaret Evans is in Tehran, gauging the mood.
On the streets here, in the markets, where people associate soaring prices with decades-old Western sanctions, there has been a thread of hope for a deal between Washington and Tehran. The value of the Iranian rial has dropped 50% over the past year, putting pressure on the government to ease economic pain. If they reach a deal, that would be great, says Laleh. It will benefit both sides. But there is also doubt and pride. My opinion is negative, says printer Mojtaba Abrushami.
Does he want them to make a deal or not?
Generally, we like Iran to have relations with all countries, he says. But the question is, at what price? U.S. President Donald Trump's earlier threats to bomb Iran haven't helped, although senior officials here downplay them. Ali Shamkhani is a political advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Within Trump's 100 days in office, he has been unsuccessful in many of his projects, he says, in the tariff war against Canada, in Ukraine, even Yemen. He says he's neither pessimistic nor optimistic. The outline of a deal would aim to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, much like the agreement Trump pulled out of in 2018 during his first presidency. Analysts here, including Sassan Karimi, say the first 3 rounds of talks between the old foes have been positive, but not yet substantive.
It shows that they both have enough political will to do so. But this was only the first phase.
And with new tensions emerging this week and a delay in the next round of talks, the worry is that that political will has already been used up. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
Die AfD ist als gesichert rechtsextremistische Partei einzustufen.
Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser announcing the country's spy agency has classified the Alternative for Germany party as extremist. AfD came second to the country's most recent election. Faeser is now warning the party represents a threat to democracy. She's pointing to its members' previous comments targeting migrants and Muslims. AfD says it's all an attempt to undermine the democratic process. Activists say their Gaza-bound aid ship has been hit by a drone strike off the coast of Malta. It's about to head to the Palestinian territory with a load of humanitarian aid. Well, it's now 2 months since Israeli authorities imposed a blockade on any aid trying to enter Gaza. Israel says it's necessary to pressure Hamas to free hostages. Anna Cunningham has more.
The moment pro-Gaza activists claim their aid ship was hit by a drone strike. The vessel was part of an activist group called the Freedom Flotilla. It was due to dock in Malta before travelling to Gaza. Amongst those waiting to board was the Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg.
This attack caused an explosion and major damage to the vessel, which made it impossible to continue the mission.
All on board were rescued by Maltese authorities. No one was injured. There is growing concern about the impact of Israel's 2-month blockade of Gaza.
The reality here is that we are breaking the bodies and the minds of the children of Gaza.
A visibly angry Michael Ryan, Deputy Director of the World Health Organization, speaking Thursday at the UN's headquarters in Geneva. Israel has previously denied that Gaza is facing a hunger crisis. It says the blockade is designed to pressure Hamas to free remaining Israeli hostages and end this war. In a community food kitchen in Gaza City, people scramble to get a meal. The UN World Food Programme says food stocks are depleting. Recent Israeli strikes have reportedly hit residential buildings and tents, sheltering displaced people in Rafah and eastern Gaza City. Israel is yet to make it clear when and how aid will resume. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
British Columbia is holding a day of mourning for the victims of last weekend's Lapu-Lapu tragedy. A mass memorial is taking place today in downtown Vancouver. 11 people were killed in the incident, more than 20 others hurt when a man in an SUV drove into a crowd attending the Filipino Street Festival. Kaiji Adam Lowe was detained at the scene after being surrounded by bystanders. Lowe is charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. He has his next court appearance this afternoon. And finally, it's open season on Ontario's black bears. Over the next 6 weeks, they're fair game for hunters, but bear advocates are pointing to new research suggesting the bear population is in decline. And that's raising questions about the hunt and the way the province is managing the species. Anayat Singh has more.
Black bear population numbers are really a social sort of decision, right?
Scientist Joe Northrup studies bears for the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources. He says black bear populations in the provinces north near Sudbury and Thunder Bay have declined significantly since 2010, by 20 to 40%, possibly due to conflicts with humans and hunting.
Our mandate is to manage species, manage natural resources sustainably, and so
the estimate is based on groundbreaking research to count bears using thousands of DNA samples collected from wild bears throughout the province.
We want to make sure that there's black bears around for all of the different social values and cultural values and ecological values that they provide Ontarians.
But the data showing population declines is only part of the puzzle. Mark Rickman is a wildlife biologist with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters.
We need to decide how many bears we want in an area as a society to determine whether or not any of those declines are of a concern and actually require management attention.
The spring bear hunt brings in as much as $50 million for the tourism sector, but is divisive because it's when mother bears have young cubs and are vulnerable. The Ontario government said no changes are planned to the hunt this year, but that it is continuing to monitor the population and will take action if needed. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you're enjoying the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps to spread the word. And remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, when's the last time we saw 27 degrees in Winnipeg? It's been a long time. We might see that this weekend. Your forecast in a moment. Welcome to Friday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is CBC. You're on Information Radio. We're live downtown in our studios, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or you might be watching on YouTube. Well, this half hour on the program, Monday feels like a long time ago, but it was voting day in this country. This half hour, we have a panel of Gen Zers from Manitoba, all with different political points of view. They're going to debrief the federal election results. And remember, across the country, there was quite a lot of change, and yet not so much change. We're still in the Liberal minority position. But Jagmeet Singh is no longer the leader of the NDP. He stepped down. Pierre Poilievre lost his seat. And we're going to find out more about what their thoughts are here in Manitoba. Going into the election, the NDP had 3 seats in Manitoba. They're down to 1. The Conservatives are still at 7, and the Liberals picked up 2. So we'll have that panel coming up in a moment. Right now, though, let's dip into what else is happening with news headlines. Heather Wells is in. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we are learning more about the victim of a homicide Monday in the West End. 22-year-old Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man both died after being found in a home on Sherbourne. Investigators are calling it murder-suicide. Carrier's boyfriend, Padden Shelton, says she went to her ex's house on Monday to get some of her things. She thought the man would be at work, but he was home. We'll hear more. A Manitoba trucker whose license was suspended is challenging the provincial law that temporarily stopped him from driving. Balwinder Bossy argues the Highway Traffic Act's review process violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We'll hear more from that story as well coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into this forecast I was mentioning. 4 degrees in Winnipeg right now. It's mostly cloudy. Winds are northwest today. You can see on the map there that there is that cloud cover. It's going to stay with us for most of the day, like a mix of sun and cloud. The winds will be northwest 20 late this afternoon, so not strong winds, and a high of 15 degrees. I think the big headline here is what's going to happen the rest of the weekend if this holds. Low 7 tonight, tomorrow sunny and 27, and tomorrow sunny and 25, and then Sunday sunny and 27 degrees. So we'll see if that holds for Winnipeg, and it's looking very similar in Westman, Brandon with highs of 24 tomorrow with a high 24, and then up in Thompson you'll also get warmer by Sunday. You're looking at a high of 20 degrees if the forecast stays like this. Well, we have had some calls on our commuter line. Corey Funk is in with an update.
Yeah, I got a call from the traveling Transconian. This was about 15 or so minutes ago. There was a collision, a multi-vehicle collision outside the Dominion Centre on Marion by the McDonald's there. That's the part of Marion heading towards St. Mary's right before you go into the Norwood Bridge there. So there is emergency vehicles on scene and it's very backed up, so it's best to just avoid that area if you can. As well, may still be an issue northbound Route 90 at Tuxedo. Naomi saw a fender bender there that was blocking the far left turning lane and the middle lane. So keep right to get around that if that is in fact still an issue. So if you have any other updates for me, if you see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, it has has been 3 days since Canadians voted in Mark Carney and the Liberals as a minority government in this country. The Liberals have one of the strongest minority governments in Canadian history. Carney's team is 3 seats short of a majority this morning. Now, the NDP, meantime, has collapsed. They've lost party status. They have no leader. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is trying to shore up support to stay on as leader, though his party, seat-wise, fared quite well. So how do Gen Zers feel about all of this and the future of Canada? This morning, we have a panel. Victoria Romero is a political science student at the University of Manitoba. They say their values align the most with the NDP. Good morning, Victoria.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. We also have in studio with us Kai Jassel, who's a student over at the University of Manitoba and says he leans conservative. Welcome.
Good morning.
And with us, Riley Gerard, an RSC Polytech student here. She was leaning toward a Liberal vote when we spoke to her last, at least. Hi, Riley.
Hi.
So let's find out how Election Day did for you. Did you, in fact, end up voting Liberal?
I did, yes.
Yeah, and how about you for the NDP?
Yes.
Yeah, and the Conservatives?
I voted Conservative, yeah.
Okay, so let's go back then to Riley and talk about Liberal. Well, obviously, you must be happy with the result, but tell me a bit about why the Liberals appealed to you.
I think there's a lot of reasons why the Liberals appealed to me. In my riding, I think that the Liberal candidate, like speaking locally, appealed to a lot of my issues that matter to me. Like he's Ukrainian and the Ukrainian community is very important to me. So locally, that's why I chose to support him. Federally, I liked how the Liberal Party handled the pandemic. I liked the investment that Winnipeg got from the Trudeau government in terms of arts and culture. And just moving forward, I wanted a government with a plan for housing, and all governments had that plan, but I liked the Liberals, and I think that Mark Carney's plan for economic development resonated with me the most.
Who's your candidate? What riding?
Thomas Nakins from Kildonan and St. Paul.
Got it. Okay, I was going to guess wrong. I was going to say Terry Duguid because he's also got some Ukrainian roots. But Thomas Nakins out in West St. Paul.
In Kildonan, St. Paul. In East St. Paul is my riding.
East St. Paul. And so that riding, I'm just trying to look at the results from that riding. I'll get my producer. That riding actually was not won by your candidate. I had to look because that's the only riding actually on election night that we were still waiting for results really late. So the Conservative held that riding. So I'm actually going to go to Kai next because the Conservatives in Manitoba held on 7 seats actually. Why did the Conservative Party appeal to you when you went to cast your vote?
So I actually live in Kildonan and St. Paul as well, so I would have voted for Raquel Dancho. I'd known her for a number of years, and I've been a Conservative supporter for a number of years as well. I thought they had the best plan for affordability to make sure that Manitoba remains a province that people can afford to live in. They had a good policies when it came to addressing crime in the city and cities across the country, and housing, of course. I'm a young person who wants to buy a house one day, making sure that we have houses for new Canadians that we're bringing in, younger people, and that they can be affordable for everyone. And so I voted for Raquel Dancho, and it was a very tight race in the end, and it was a very competitive seat. But ultimately, in terms of the 7 seats that the Conservatives won, they won 2 in the city, right? They exchanged the one in Winnipeg West for Elmwood Transcona, and they held the one they had in Kildonan and St. Paul, and I think affordability was the driving reason behind that.
So we will bring Victoria into the conversation in a moment here, but I do want to, both of you brought up housing, so I think it's interesting because housing we know is a huge issue for everybody in this country, but of course a lot of young people who would be, Gen Zers might be worried about ever owning, and what that means moving forward. You said the Liberal plan appealed to you for housing. You said the Conservative plan. So specifically, why do you think the Conservatives had it right for your future?
I thought the Conservatives had the best plan because it was the plan that would have freed up the zoning laws that exist with municipalities, because the federal government gives money to the municipalities, but in the for the 10 years that Trudeau was in power, they re-announced the same housing policy every single one of their elections, and still we built fewer and fewer homes. The Conservatives had a more novel policy, which would be to tie the number of housing starts to the amount of funding that municipalities would get, and that would be tied to zoning codes so that they could actually start building. And here in Manitoba, we have a lot of home building that goes on in Winnipeg, so that's a good thing to see, but that's not the case in other parts of the country.
In the housing plan from the Liberals, what gave you confidence, or I guess gives you confidence, given that they have formed government?
Well, I think that the solution in housing is investing more money and more resources into it, and I think that cutting taxes and cutting from housing that industry isn't the right way to build it. And I think that the fact that Carney's using a plan or proposing to use a plan that has worked in the past before, I think is a good place to start. We've seen positive results from it, and I think a lot of the issues that we had with the last housing plan was like the Housing Accelerator Fund, for example. We saw a lot of issues there that prevented home growth. And I think that investing into the community and watching the stipulations that we put on investments so that municipalities can grow is the way to take it forward.
Victoria, you've been so patient. Let's get you in for the NDP here. And remember that some of the seats in Manitoba that flip were at the cost of the NDP, right? So what are your thoughts on, first of all, the election result, and also some people are saying that some NDPers will understand the cost, that it was done to keep Poilievre out. There's a sacrifice across the country, but other people are just saying they're deeply disappointed. So what are you thinking at your party's collapse?
I definitely think there's a lot of confusion with the direction of the party right now. I know that the Liberals were able to campaign on the premise of we're going to continue doing $10 a day childcare. We're going to continue with our pharmacare that we've recently passed. But those things, while the Liberals are promising to continue them, they were achieved from heavy advocacy and pushing from the NDP. So things like that, even with the housing, I lean towards the Liberal plan. However, neither party has a plan for current issues. For example, the NDP plan to freeze rent, which is something that Gen Zers specifically deal with a lot. And, a lot of us are renting, and we can't even think about owning our first home if we can't pay our rent now. So a lot of those things, they are very valuable aspects needed in our Canadian polity. And I think Canadians will suffer a great lack of policies that are far-reaching enough to include everybody with a lack of the NDP. But I do think with the Liberals minority, we'll still be able to see some collaboration and some pushing. They are going to have to, those 3 votes that they'll need they will come from the NDP or they'll come from the Bloc. But I hope through that we'll see collaboration. And I'm really glad that at least in Winnipeg Centre, where we are now, that Leah Gazan was able to hold on to her seat because she is a powerful advocate, not only for Winnipeggers, but for people all across the country.
Asked your fellow panelists sort of about issues sort of that were top of mind for them as a Gen Zer. How about for you?
Definitely affordability, but again, ensuring that our affordability plans tackle addressing those most vulnerable in society. Our economy suffers when people at the bottom of our society are not given a hand up. They're not helped out. Things like rent control, things like grocery prices, understanding how we are addressing issues like addictions and poverty in our country, because those are bearing burdens on our healthcare system. I like to think in a holistic way, where not only this election wasn't just for us, but it's for the next 25, 30 years of Canadians, and we need to be thinking about policies that have that longevity.
Let's talk about leadership. So we'll go back to you first, Riley. How are you feeling about Mark Carney and his approach? He will move that party in a different direction. He has some differences to Justin Trudeau, especially particularly economically. So what are your thoughts on him as a leader?
I think he was a really strategic choice for the Liberals. I think that if they wanted to maintain a minority or push for a majority, that I think that someone more economically right or center was a smart choice. And I think that paid off, and we held on to the minority. It would have been nice to see the majority, but I think that he was a strategic choice, and I think that he is right for what the Liberals need, and I think that he speaks to the most Canadian values staying within with the Liberal Party values as well.
What do you mean by Canadian values? What values are you thinking about?
I'm thinking around the economic values right now in terms of affordability, like we've all been talking about, and I think that he resonates with those affordability values and, owning a house while still investing in communities and all of that.
Kai, do you think Pierre Poilievre should stay on as leader?
I do think he should stay on as leader. He won the leadership race, unlike the 2 men before him, with a commanding victory. He won about 70% of that. And when you look at the raw votes that the Conservatives won, they won about 8 million. That's the most they've ever won, both the Modern Party and the PC Party going back. And I would say they overperformed. I was thinking the Liberals would actually win a majority government with about 180 seats. They fell short of that and won a minority. And I thought the Conservative Party would end up around 120, 130, and they got 145 because of massive gains in Ontario. So
does he need to change his tone? We had this interesting conversation this morning because he already did change his tone on election night. He seemed to be a little bit more like he was talking about unity. He was like, no, don't boo Mark Carney, like a little bit less combative. That's been his political tone in the House as the opposition leader. Or is that appealing? Does it feel like he's fighting for you? I'm just curious.
Well, we'll have to see, because Mark Carney as an opponent is very different from Justin Trudeau, especially at the start of his mandate as opposed to Trudeau where it was at his end. Pierre Poilievre, he also lost his seat on election night, so he won't be in the House of Commons to be the debater that he's been on YouTube and Twitter during that leadership and over the past 2 years. So maybe he'll take a different tone, but we'll have to see. And I mean, the next 4 years, and I do think it would be 4 years because the dynamics of the parliament haven't really changed. It's a strong minority, but either the Bloc or the NDP can be dance partners for the Liberals, that we won't be going into an election anytime soon. And so a lot can happen in the next 4 years.
What are you looking for in the next leader of the NDP, Victoria? Because Jagmeet Singh is leaving.
Well, I do think that his loss of his seat is different than what Pierre's loss of the seat means. I think that Pierre's seat loss more so signals a deep unpopularity with Pierre Poilievre himself, as opposed to the Conservative Party and their ideas, because obviously they did make huge gains that we haven't seen in decades. But for the NDP, I think it more so signals confusion and loss of where the party is going, what their ideas are. I think, like I said, we saw the Liberals, claim a lot of their responsibility for the policies that the NDP were largely responsible for. So a lot of people, well, it's the same thing. I'll vote for the NDP. So I'm looking for somebody who is able to distinguish the party and really set them out and make sure that they're listening to. There are still contingents of NDP or left voters that didn't end up strategically voting for Liberals that were unhappy with the NDP. So definitely listening to all voices. And, if that's your voter base now, you've lost people to the Liberals, maybe making sure you're paying attention to what they're saying as well.
Just last, purely through a Gen Z, and I always feel like I need to say Gen Z, but it's Gen Z comes out of my mouth, right? Through that lens, like through your generation's lens, how can politicians, all of them, do a better job of representing you, of reaching you? The three of you are very political minded, but a lot of your generation isn't. What do you think, Victoria?
I think it's more than just going to the social media platforms where young people are, like making TikTok videos or, using popular songs for young people's songs on your promotional material. It's about meaningful inclusion and really understanding that young people, they may not be as politically informed, but they're not naive, and they understand when a government isn't taking them seriously. So meaningful engagement and very intentionality with how we're doing this, making sure youth are involved not only when we go to a rally to promote ourselves as a candidate or as the leader, but in all facets. And with the new Carney government, I would hope that all the people who chose to vote for him are making sure that they hold them accountable for what they voted for.
Not or not, but do y'all feel sometimes like politicians don't take you seriously because you're young?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
I got nod from a Liberal NDP voter, and then Kai, a Conservative voter, you said, you don't know. So
and
tell
here's
me.
why. So ever since Poilievre became the leader and the Conservative Party decided to adopt a more younger tone and try to appeal to younger voters, whether that be on housing or affordability or any of these things, they managed to get a lot more votes from younger people. You look at the crosstabs of opinion polling and the demographics, it's older voters who are voting more Liberal and more progressive and younger voters who voted more Conservative.
So what did he say to you that spoke to you in that way?
Part of that was housing. Part of that was affordability. You want to move out of your parents' basement. You want to be able to start a family. You want to be able to get a job and maintain your job. I looked at the student vote results, and it voted in a Conservative minority government with about 165 seats.
So you felt seen by the party?
I felt seen by the party, and millions of other young people did in this election, and they turned out to vote blue.
And just last then, let's go to Riley for a last word on this.
Well, see, I think that the reason why the Conservatives appealed to a lot of young people and why I think that, back to your other question about what leaders can do to talk to our generation, is the language that they use around policy and what they're going to do. I think that the Conservatives ran a very slogan-heavy campaign. It was a lot of taglines and slogans, and those are easy to repeat. Those are easy to understand. We're going to axe the tax and all of those Conservative slogans. Like, it's easy to catch on that. And if there are a lot of voters who aren't sure or who don't know and don't understand a lot of the political jargon that gets used by politicians, using those slogans, there's a really good way to capture young people or to capture anyone, frankly, who doesn't understand political policy. So I think that a leader, in order to resonate with our...
I can see you vibrating because she just said you might not understand political policy, but I don't. Or maybe there's a suggestion there. But I know what you're saying. You're talking about slogans versus, But having said that, if the Liberals go deeper with things, and you nodded and said they may not be connecting with people, then maybe there's some middle ground here to be able to reach people.
Yeah, I think slogans they serve their purpose, but I think that part of the reason why Carney won is because he won with his policies, and I think that a good way to talk to more voters is just simplifying your policies, just how you're explaining them to voters, so that they're easier and that their language reaches a wider audience. And I think that's the key to reaching a wider demographic.
Thank you all for being here. We've taken the half hour. You were all so great. Please come back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll see what the government does moving forward. This has been our Jed Zen panelist, Victoria with us this morning in studio, Victoria Romero, as well as Kai Jassel and Riley Gerard. It is right now 8:28 a.m. and we're heading for news time. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and on YouTube. I want to thank those who worked on the show today. I just want to take a minute here in the last part of the show. You guys can go if you want. I know you feel like you're stuck in studio, and I'm stuck here, but you can head out. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your Friday. Here's my thank you. So our news department, Heather Wells, Alana Cole, and Megan Ketchison, as well as a big thanks to those who work in our unit. So in our unit, Chidi Akuma and Sierra Sanders, community reporter Shannalee Vidal, as well as Jim Agapito. We also want to give thanks to Kalkadan Mulugeta, as well as Abby Adeyemi and Brad Lillies and Corey Funk. Also our producer of our current affairs programs overall, Nellie Gonzalez, our senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, Leif Larson, and Issa Kixon and May McKillop, who are associate producers in our unit. Big thanks to everybody who worked so hard on the programs, and special thanks also to Donna Carrero, who was one of the producers of our election coverage and our different election panels and remotes this week. Also, I just want to take a moment, because we've been on remote a lot this month, Information Radio, to thank all of those restaurant owners and managers who were up early to let the show in. It's a big task, you know what I mean, to allow the show to be there and take up space in our community studios, but it's of great value to be out there. So thank you to everybody who allowed us to come in and set up. We will see you out in community in the weeks and months ahead. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:34 degrees, mix of sun and clouds today. Still feeling a little cool, but really nice, actually. 15 is the high today. And do we warm up for the weekend in the mid to upper 20s? Family and friends are mourning the death of a 22-year-old woman killed Monday in the West End. Winnipeg police found Nadia Flett-Carrier and a man, both in critical condition, in a home on Sherbourne. Both later died. Investigators are calling it a murder-suicide. Carrier's stepfather, Ken Everard, says Carrier and the man had previously been in a relationship, but she moved back in with her family 6 months ago.
She was a really happy person. She loved to laugh and she loved to joke, and we were enjoying our time with her. We were enjoying her being back home and sort of rebuilding roots and a foundation at home with us again.
Everard says Carrier went to her ex's house on Monday to collect some of her things. She thought the man would be at work, but he was at home. Police would not identify the 27-year-old man who took his own life. A local clinic is providing a way for people to test drugs for fentanyl free of charge. Test strips are the newest items in a health box vending machine at Norwest Co-op Community Health. Kazel Ibora is a primary care nurse at that clinic, and she says while the strips can detect potentially deadly fentanyl, they're putting other measures in place to help stop the harm.
One of our strategies to prevent overdose is also including a pamphlet in here that goes over tips on how to be safe with it, like having naloxone, never using alone. We've also made a video that we're hoping to put on our website and on the health box.
The clinic expects the addition of the test strips are going to help many people. So far, 11 test strip kits have been handed out. A Manitoba truck driver whose license was suspended is challenging the provincial law that temporarily stopped him from driving. Balwinder Bossy argues the Highway Traffic Act's review process violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Bossy was pulled over in 2022 and asked to do a breathalyzer test. He blew into it several times, but the device didn't get a result. Police eventually charged him with refusing to provide a sample. Bossy later pleaded his case at a review hearing with Manitoba Public Insurance, but was unsuccessful. He now is being represented by MLA Mark Wasilyu, who is also a defense lawyer. Wasilyu argued in court yesterday, the system sets people like Bossy up to fail and needs to be changed. The judge gives her decision at a later date. With a group of Canadian veterans center stage, the Netherlands is commemorating the 80th anniversary of that country's liberation from Nazi Germany. A memorial ceremony underway at the Grosbeak Canadian War Cemetery. It is the final resting place for more than 2,000 Canadian soldiers. Today's service is one of many scheduled ahead of Liberation Day, which is Monday. It commemorates Germany's surrender in the Netherlands on May 5th, 1945. 21 Canadian veterans of the Second World War are on hand. The youngest is 96. The oldest is 105. Well, a local yarn store is helping Netflix with their reboot of a TV series. Little House on the Prairie. That was back in the 1970s. A team of 15 craftspeople now are hand-making 65 garments for the beloved characters of that show. Crystal Sokold is owner of Pearl and Hank. She says it's the shop's largest and most challenging commission yet. When she got the order from the show's costume designer, she couldn't believe it.
Honestly, I don't even really remember. It wasn't until he came in to pick out the yarns that I was really like, okay, this is happening. This is a big deal.
The team has 5 weeks to finish before the reboot of Little House on the Prairie starts filming this summer. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
It is right now coming up to the end of the show. Thank you, Heather Wells. I mentioned I'd have additional thank yous at the end of the program. So it is Friday, so let's thank the associate producers, the full list. So I want to include some names here. Madison Eldridge, who is working as a Red River journalism student, had a great item on today. Also, big thanks to Sid Sundance Horshig, Dylan Longhurst, Bruce Layden, Marshall Hodgins, and Chloe Friesen. Producer in unit, Wendy Parker, I had neglected to mention before the news. Hosts in unit, Marjorie Dalhouse, Faith Fundal, and Nadia Kidwai, in addition to all those mentioned. Thank you so much for your work. All right, Corey, final look at what's happening in the commute.
Yeah, westbound Marion, right before St. Mary's at the foot of the Norwood Bridge there. Look out outside the Dominion Centre. There's been a multi-vehicle collision heard earlier from the traveling Transconian. It was blocking pretty much all of westbound Marion at that time. Haven't got any updates. Might still be an issue. Emergency vehicles were on scene. Could be some big backups there. That's the biggest issue I've heard of this morning. But if you see anything else, you can always give us a call. Well, Monday, 204-788-3093.
We'll be waiting a long time.
Yes.
Text Corey. He wants your calls all weekend. Thanks, Corey,
Thank
for the
you.
week. Appreciate it. And by the way, I misspoke here. Madison Eldridge joining us this week in our newsroom from Carleton. All right. Thank you for listening, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This has been CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. We will see how the Jets fare tonight. Enjoy the beautiful weekend as I leave you here. Just a reminder of how gorgeous it's going to get in Winnipeg. We are expecting that today is going to head to a high of 15 today, mainly cloudy for us in Winnipeg, but tomorrow 24, and by Sunday we could see 26 degrees. So enjoy it however you are going to do that. Take care. The Current's coming up next on CBC.